Bang! A deafening crash echoed. The front of my vehicle was suddenly covered in blood and gore. The zombies clinging to the windshield vanished without a trace. The power of the air cannon cleared a space of nearly 20 meters in front of the vehicle. The zombies further away were also injured, and almost the moment their wounds appeared, they were torn apart and devoured alive by the horde behind them. Phew! I breathed a sigh of relief, patted the dashboard, and kept driving. Such a loud noise would definitely attract more zombies from afar, but by the time they arrived, I'd be long gone. The horde would be drawn to the corpses and their slaughtered kind, swarming together to fight over the food. Thanks to that, the pressure behind me eased up. After passing the mandatory main road, I turned into a small alley. These streets used to be bustling, but now there were only a few zombies wandering around, far fewer than on the main road. The mobile base's exterior armor was undamaged. The glass was intact. The windshield was cleaned. A stream of water sprayed from the wipers, washing away all the foul blood on the minibus's windshield. Behind me, on the road I had just passed, two long, winding trails of blood were left behind. After spending the whole day navigating the small streets of Jinling City using the map, I was constantly on high alert, exhausted to the bone. But when I saw the residential area ahead, the sluggishness in my body almost instantly vanished. The Lanyuan district that Jiang Zhuiying had told me about was right here. The residential area was right next to the university she attended, separated only by a small alley. This was the faculty apartment complex, whereas the university campus itself was heavily infested with zombies. Thinking of that, I knew full well that the number of zombies in this residential area wouldn't be small either. I slowed down and slowly drove the minibus into the complex. The guardhouse was drenched in blood. The ground was covered in dried blood and drag marks, making my heart involuntarily clench. I had seen too many scenes like this on the way, some even more gruesome, but never had the feeling of anxiety been as clear as it was now. Inside, the residential area was terrifyingly quiet. On both sides were buildings with pitch-black windows, completely devoid of life. Corpses and bloodstains were everywhere. I drove very slowly, making almost no noise. It seemed quiet on the outside, but I knew for sure that the buildings were crawling with zombies. Getting close to where Jiang Zhuiying was hiding, I didn't want to draw attention and lure those monsters out. A zombie suddenly lunged out from a nearby flower bed, instantly getting crushed under my wheels. The vehicle jolted slightly. I maintained my slow speed while vigilantly observing both sides, my eyes searching for the building Jiang Zhuiying had mentioned. Building 17. Number 17. I looked at the numbers hanging on the walls. Building 17 was near the main gate, but in a rather secluded spot, exactly as I had instructed her beforehand. The roads in the residential area were narrow and maze-like. Just clearing an obstacle and making a little noise would be enough to call all the zombies in the area over. If you weren't familiar with the roads, the consequences would be extremely troublesome. Just getting near the entrance, everything was still under control. I had mentally prepared myself. As soon as I got Jiang Zhuiying down, we would leave in the mobile base as fast as possible. Very quickly, the silhouette of Building 17 appeared in my line of sight. I glanced at the phone placed next to me. On the screen was a music app, the volume turned down to a very low level. This was the plan I had calculated beforehand, even testing it a few times on the way. Arriving below the building, I rolled down the cabin window, hit play, threw the phone toward the main entrance, and backed the vehicle up a bit. My foot rested on the gas pedal, just waiting for the zombies to appear before flooring it. To get Jiang Zhuiying down, I had to leave the vehicle. But with only a bulletproof vest, a helmet, and a handgun, I couldn't guarantee safety for both of us. Therefore, the best way was to use sound to lure the zombies out and deal with them. The phone's volume was only loud enough for zombies within a 20-meter radius to hear. To a human, it was almost inaudible, but to zombies, it was different. I waited for over 10 seconds. A staggering figure appeared at the building's entrance. The zombie rushed out, attracted by the sound, but it didn't attack the phone because the only thing it cared about was living creatures. I wasn't in a hurry to hit the gas. The zombie spotted me in the vehicle. Its bloodshot eyes immediately locked onto the target, lunging forward to scratch frantically. I remained motionless, waiting patiently. But after a long time, there was still only that single zombie at the door. Could it be there's only one in this building? Or were the others all locked in their rooms, unable to get out? Perfect. After confirming there were no other threats, I immediately drove forward. Crunch. The zombie was crushed under the wheels. I parked the vehicle sideways right up against the main entrance, put on my helmet, grabbed my Type 54 pistol, and opened the door to step out. The phone speaker might not be loud enough to draw zombies down from the 5th or 6th floor, so I picked up the phone and walked inside while playing the music. This way, if any zombies appeared, I still had a way to retreat to the vehicle. The elevator had long since stopped working. As soon as I got close, I heard a heavy thud from inside. Something was banging against the elevator doors. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly adjusted my helmet and carefully headed toward the stairs. The light in the stairwell was dim. Only my light footsteps echoed. Jiang Zhuing lived on the top floor. I slowly climbed up. Reaching the 4th floor, I placed the phone on the ground, went back down to the 3rd floor, and tensely aimed my gun at the hallway. After waiting a moment and seeing no movement, I went back up, grabbed the phone, and turned off the music. Sure enough, there were no zombies in this area. When I reached the top floor and approached Jiang Zhuing's apartment, my heart pounded uncontrollably, mixed with the excitement of being about to accomplish something incredibly important. Standing in front of the door, I took a deep breath, knocked lightly, and said in a low voice, "Xiaoying, it's me." There was no answer. Thud. A muffled sound came from the apartment opposite, making my scalp tingle. A zombie was frantically scratching at the security door. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was almost scared to death. Turning back to knock again, I suddenly realized that the door I had just tapped twice was slowly creaking open. I carefully pushed the door and stepped inside, quickly realizing that it hadn't been fully closed, just left slightly ajar from the inside. Just enough to prevent the wind from blowing it open or a zombie from pushing it wide, but not completely latched. That meant the door had been intentionally left unlocked. My heart suddenly skipped a beat. I immediately rushed inside, calling out loudly, "Jiang Zhuiying." The apartment was empty. Almost all the furniture had been pushed to the sides, leaving a wide, open space in the middle. Just looking at the leftover food boxes, I could tell this place used to be filled with supplies. I almost instantly kicked open every door in the house. Then, in one of the bedrooms, I saw Jiang Zhuiying's clothes. It was a t-shirt I remembered very well, because the front had a silly hand-drawn picture, a cartoon version of me getting punched away by a cartoon version of Jiang Zhuiying. This shirt was a birthday present she gave me a few years ago, but I had refused to wear it because I thought it was too ridiculous. In the end, Jiang Zhuiying happily wore it herself, wearing it for years, completely ignoring my helpless stares. Seeing the shirt, an indescribable lump formed in my throat. I picked up the shirt and immediately noticed a line written on the back, "Brother, wait for me." I stood frozen for a moment, then flipped the shirt over, checking every spot carefully. What is this? I gripped the shirt tightly, feeling both anxious and impatient. If you're going to leave a message, why not write a few more words? Just 3 short words, no context, giving me absolutely no clues. Of course, I didn't really blame Jiang Zhuiying. I was just too worried. The supplies in the apartment were gone, even though she wasn't supposed to leave this place, going against her promise to me. At the very least, Jiang Zhuiying knew for sure I would come here, and unless something special happened, she would have stayed and waited. Yet in the end, she only left 3 words and vanished. What on earth happened? I walked around the apartment one more time, but couldn't find any other messages. Finally, I could only take the t-shirt, leave the building, and head back to the mobile base. Perhaps because the smell of blood from the zombie I crushed earlier had spread, as soon as I stepped outside, a few zombies from the surrounding buildings were already staggering over, surrounding the vehicle. I carefully climbed in and returned to the cabin. I couldn't find Jiang Zhuiying. Aside from the words, "Wait for me," she hadn't left any other information. I decided to wait here for a while. Jinling City was too big. I couldn't just recklessly search blindly. If Jiang Zhuiying still didn't show up in a few days, I would start searching around this area. Killing the zombies outside might attract even more, so I decided to just ignore them. I closed the partition between the cabin and the living area, turned on the lights, and turned this place into a cozy, private little room. Outside, zombies roamed endlessly, but in here, I could cook, watch movies, and rest in complete peace. As long as I didn't make any loud noises, the zombies wouldn't notice me. Even if they heard some faint sounds, they would just scratch the vehicle a few times and leave. Their reaction to the phone earlier had confirmed this for me. The minibus wasn't afraid of a few zombies scratching at it, so I felt pretty secure about my safety. The only thing that kept me on edge was Jiang Zhuiying. If she didn't show up, I had to find some way to track her down. Searching every single place was impossible. I might need to find other survivors to ask around, or even record an audio message and play it at a few fixed locations. While pondering all sorts of plans, my eyes remained fixed on the t-shirt resting on the sofa. I knew my sister's personality very well. She might be playful outside, but at home, she was incredibly obedient. Since I was always the one taking care of her, Jiang Zhuiying valued my words highly. Whenever she faced difficulties, she would always come to me first. Yet this time, with something so major, why didn't she listen? I suddenly thought of the group I had met before, Brother Yu and his racing gang. Jinling was so vast, there were definitely still quite a few survivors. Could Jiang Zhuiying have ended up in a situation like when Lu and her group? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I became. Finally unable to sit still any longer, I took out the map and started studying the surrounding area carefully. There was no internet. But the offline map of Jinling I had downloaded was so detailed that even small roadside shops were clearly marked. Earlier, I couldn't use the map while driving through the mountains because those were just remote dirt roads, not included in the downloaded data. Time flew by, and the sky gradually darkened. I was just about to cook some food when I suddenly heard zombies roaring outside the window. Startled, I was about to pull up the blinds when I heard a series of slicing sounds, mixed with the heavy thuds of things hitting the ground. I immediately pressed against the window, listening to the voices outside. Feels like boss is getting stronger and stronger. Killing zombies is like stepping on ants. Look at these corpses, charred inside and out. There's a weird smell too. A male voice rang out. Right after, a sweet but annoyed female voice replied, "You're so annoying. If you want to suck up to boss, at least don't say such disgusting things." How is that sucking up? I'm just telling the truth. Huh. Since when is there another vehicle parked here? The minibus was parked so conspicuously, it wasn't strange for anyone to notice it. But I still didn't know who these people were. Judging by the girl's tone, it seemed they had been here before. It was very likely related to Jiang Zhuiying's departure. I lightly touched the gun at my side and slowly moved toward the driver's cabin. These people could easily kill zombies, so they definitely weren't weak. I didn't know if they were friends or foes, but when approaching, it was best to be prepared for anything, especially this boss they just mentioned. I heard the man's voice getting very close. He had clearly walked right up to the vehicle and was curiously inspecting the minibus. Can't see a thing. No one's in the cabin. Wonder where they went, the male voice continued. Immediately after, the sweet but annoyed female voice replied, "Why do you care where they went? They might have already been eaten clean by those zombies." The man chuckled. "I'm just curious. Who drives such a big vehicle around randomly? It's just a beat-up old piece of junk anyway. What's there to be curious about?" Her voice dripped with disdain, partly to annoy the man, and partly reflecting her true thoughts. Truth be told, my vehicle did look very beat up at first glance. Not only was the exterior shabby, but it was also towing a small, rusty cargo trailer behind it, and the roof was piled with a few weird-looking snakeskin sacks. Before the apocalypse, maybe no one would have cared. But in the current situation, a vehicle like this just made people feel it was too dilapidated. It looked like a single horde of zombies could tear it apart in an instant. "Where's this license plate from?" The man ignored the girl's words and kept inspecting. "Looks like a Jiangbei plate." He muttered to himself, then continued. "Look at that little cargo trailer and the sacks on the roof. Wonder what's inside? Want to open it and see? What else could it be? Probably just garbage," the girl replied impatiently. "Let's just take a look. What if there's something useful?" the man said. At this point, I couldn't sit still any longer. Just as I was about to open the cabin door, a familiar voice suddenly rang out, carrying a hint of joy. "It really is a Jiangbei plate." I was startled. I immediately threw open the cabin door and rushed to the windshield to look out. There were about 5 or 6 people standing by the vehicle, and right in the middle of them, I instantly spotted Jiang Zhuiying. She was wearing simple denim shorts, an oversized denim jacket over a white t-shirt, her hair tied in a ponytail. She looked youthful and pretty. In her hand, she held an iron rod, her eyes glued to the vehicle. When our eyes met, her eyes widened, her lips parted into an O shape, and then she screamed, "Brother!" The others, who were already surprised by my appearance, were now even more stunned. "Zhu Ying's brother?" they asked in astonishment. But I was even more surprised. I never expected her to be in this group of people. What shocked me the most was that right after Zhu Ying called me brother, the man's voice from earlier rang out again. "No way. Boss, is this really your brother?" It was the voice of a young man in his 20s, sporting a buzz cut, wearing casual clothes, holding a long sword, and wearing a weird armband on his shoulder. His expression was so exaggerated it was almost comical, looking at me as if he were witnessing something unbelievable. I couldn't believe my eyes either. Just a moment ago, I was thinking I had to be on guard against this boss they mentioned. Who would have thought that person was actually my sister? Through the windshield, I looked at Zhu Ying, and she looked back at me. Both of us had our eyes wide open, stunned for a moment. Boss's brother managed to get here all the way from Jiangbei alone, just relying on this vehicle? The young man with the sword and the others stood outside, dumbfounded. Siblings reuniting. Naturally, we went inside the vehicle to talk. But he just stood there, his face full of disbelief. A curly-haired girl in the group shot him a glare and lowered her voice. "Do you have a death wish?" Speaking so loudly. "Are you afraid Zhu Ying won't hear you?" What's the big deal? He didn't care at all, still staring at the vehicle in awe. The curly-haired girl's expression was a bit ugly, because she had insulted this vehicle quite a bit earlier, and Zhu Ying had definitely heard it. I probably heard it all too. Now that he was acting so amazed, it was no different from continuing to imply that this vehicle was just a piece of junk, and it also carried the implication that he didn't believe I could actually make it to Jinling. In fact, they all previously thought it was almost impossible for me to get here from Jiangbei. Even Zhu Ying had been preparing to find a chance to head back to Jiangbei. But unexpectedly, I had actually driven a beat-up vehicle like this all the way to Jinling. This vehicle looks like it's been modified. Pretty smart. The young man with the sword clicked his tongue in praise. Earlier, when a few zombies surrounded the vehicle, I hid in the cabin. He thought I had intentionally used the cabin door to distract the zombies. The zombie I had crushed earlier had already been eaten clean by the others. Even if they saw the traces, they wouldn't connect the dots. The curly-haired girl rolled her eyes, clearly not fond of the young man. But what he said matched what she was observing. Before, she had zero interest in this vehicle, but knowing it was the one I drove here, she started getting more curious. No matter how closely she looked, she couldn't see anything special about it. Instead, she paid more attention to me. "Who knows, maybe Zhu Ying's brother is also really strong," she suddenly said. Hearing that, the others thought it made sense, all guessing in their hearts. "If that's the case, then he really is a badass," the young man with the sword marveled again. Zhu Ying was already their leader and incredibly strong herself, so her brother probably wasn't simple either. In the group, I also saw a tall, muscular man holding an axe, looking extremely fierce. "Even a guy like that listens to you?" I turned to look at Zhu Ying, my heart filled with complex emotions. We had been talking for over 10 minutes. Most of the time, I let her speak while I just listened. I was absolutely astounded by Zhu Ying's current situation. The starseed only said she wouldn't turn into a zombie, but that didn't mean it could predict her future. The reality before my eyes showed that the path Zhu Ying took was completely different from what I had initially thought. As it turned out, Zhu Ying was a mutant. After discovering that, she started practicing. But a while later, she was forced to leave her hideout. Then, survivors gradually gathered around her, and she became their leader. That blunt title of boss was simply due to her personal preference. Looking at my petite sister, who looked like the textbook definition of cute, yet loved fighting and killing so much, I really didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If outsiders didn't know better, they would definitely be fooled by her appearance. "What do you mean, forced to leave?" I asked. Zhu Ying pouted, thought for a moment, and said, "It's hard to explain. You'll understand later." I still couldn't quite believe it. During the time I was on my way to Jinling, my sister Jiang Jing not only became a mutant, but also the leader of a survivor group. Moreover, it wasn't just an ordinary group. According to Zhu Ying, the group currently had over 20 people. The number didn't sound large, But when I learned that 4 of them were mutants, my heart truly shook. Back in the small town, Brother Wu alone was enough to dominate and run rampant. So what 4 mutants represented went without saying. What was even more terrifying was that among those 4, Zhu was the strongest. In her own words, she was the undisputed leader. When we were kids, Zhu was already the ringleader among the neighborhood children, while I was always quieter and less conspicuous. Usually, girls would get bullied by boys, and then the adults would have to step in to demand justice. But Zhu was the exact opposite. Back then, it was just child's play, yet now she had truly become a leader, guiding an entire group of survivors. In the apocalypse, every decision a leader makes is directly tied to the life and death of the whole team. Xiaoying, what's your ability? I asked. Brother Wu's ability was clearly shown in his highly developed leg muscles and superior speed. But looking at Zhu, I didn't see any physical mutations. She was still slender, just looking a bit more agile from frequent exercise. She didn't look like someone with overwhelming combat power at all. Did you kill all those zombies outside the vehicle earlier? I had vaguely guessed her power. Being able to wipe out so many zombies in such a short time, almost simultaneously, was definitely not simple. In front of me, Zhu still acted like a kid. Hearing my question, she immediately showed an expression she would definitely never let anyone else see. She smiled smugly and lightly swung the iron rod in her hand. Crackle! Blue electric arcs instantly danced along the rod. I was startled, the electric light reflecting straight into my pupils. I was truly shocked. Even though Brother Wu's ability was strong, it was just far beyond a normal human's, still within an acceptable range. But a human body directly generating and discharging electricity was completely different. Even though I knew humans could generate static electricity, that at most only caused a slight tingle. But the electric current Zhu just produced made me clearly feel the danger. How about it, brother? Isn't your sister awesome? I even measured my attack voltage, Zhu said, showing off like a kid who just scored a perfect grade. How much? I asked immediately, in no mood to tease her. Hee, right now it's 1,000 volts. I took a deep breath. I knew very well that when the voltage reached that level, the body's resistance would drop sharply, and the current passing through could reach 1 amp, with a power output of up to 1,000 watts, a number enough to make anyone shudder. But at the end of the day, mutants had been altered by the virus. Just like electric eels could generate electricity, this was hard to believe, but not impossible to explain. I looked at Zhu, quickly making comparisons in my head. Her ability clearly far surpassed Brother Wu's. According to the Starseed's assessment, Brother Wu's energy hadn't even reached level 1. As for Zhu, discharge your electricity one more time, I said. Do you think I'm Pikachu? She grumbled, but still complied. This time, blue-white currents wrapped around the iron rod like an electric net. Her clear eyes reflected the sparks, and her whole body exuded a completely different aura. Just 2 seconds later, the Starseed's voice echoed in my mind. Level 1 mutant energy detected. I understood immediately. Zhu was level 1, and there was a plus sign behind it, meaning her energy was stronger than a standard level 1, perhaps even surpassing the mutant wild boar. Brother Wu probably hadn't even touched this threshold. What was your voltage at the beginning? I continued asking. I'm not sure either. I just remember at first, I could create an electric arc about 10 centimeters long between my fingers. So, Zhu had been constantly evolving. Alright, where did you get this vehicle? It's amazing. Also, did you know about the apocalypse beforehand? Zhu leaned close to my ear, lowering her voice as if sharing a secret. I was about to answer when 2 knocks sounded on the door outside. The young man's voice called in. Boss, we have to go. It's getting dark. I turned to look outside. Sure enough, the sky was darkening. Brother, let's talk later. We have to go. Zhu looked out the window and said softly. As soon as it got dark, everyone immediately packed up to leave. I saw them quickly pick up their backpacks from the ground, gripping their weapons tightly. Their tension was palpable, completely different from their relaxed demeanor while resting earlier. Jiang Zhuing was about to step out of the mobile base when she suddenly paused, turned to look at me, and said in surprise, Brother, let's go. But as we were about to leave, I didn't follow her out of the vehicle, nor did I pack anything. Instead, I walked straight over and sat in the driver's seat. Come sit here. I motioned with my eyes toward the passenger seat, then rolled down the window and said to the people outside, "Everyone get in. We're driving out of here." Seeing me sit in the driver's seat, the others hadn't even reacted yet, perhaps feeling their own speculations were a bit absurd. But upon hearing this, they instantly froze, looking at each other in disbelief. Drive? Leave? If it were a car, it would be one thing. But this was a mid-sized bus. Driving this thing out on the street. Wasn't that just turning ourselves into a massive target for the zombie horde? Standing out wasn't too big of a deal anyway. They all had abilities, and Zhu was even stronger. At most, it just meant a few more fights. The problem was that this vehicle wasn't just old. It was also towing a small cargo trailer behind it. Moreover, looking at my expression, I clearly had no intention of unhitching it. My tone was so natural, as if driving this vehicle away was a given. In reality, not only did I see no problem with it, but I also highly valued this mobile base. Normally, I wouldn't easily let others onto my vehicle. But since these were Zhu people, I took the initiative to offer. Zhu looked outside, then looked at me, and without hesitation, sat in the passenger seat. Seeing the others still standing there in a daze, she leaned close to the windshield and shouted, "What are you standing there for? Get in." They originally thought it would be hard for them to refuse Zhu brother's offer, but that Zhu could. Who would have thought that this time, she would agree immediately without a second thought? So the young man, the curly-haired girl, and the other three looked at each other, then obediently boarded the vehicle one by one. As soon as they stepped inside, they were all stunned. It looked beat up on the outside, but the inside was like a fully equipped mobile home. The curly-haired girl looked around, realizing this vehicle really had everything. This vehicle is pure luxury. The young man couldn't help but marvel. The curly-haired girl shot him a glare and said nothing, but in her heart, she thought, luxury is luxury, but what use is it in the apocalypse? It's not practical at all. She walked up to the cabin and flashed a sweet smile. "Hello, Zhu brother. I'm Yang Qingqing. Nice to meet you. You came all the way from Jiangbei. That's really impressive. It must have been tough." Her words were measured and tactful, showing concern without being too obvious. As she spoke, she proactively offered a fair, delicate hand. "Hello, just call me Jiang Lushi." I politely reached out my hand. Right at the moment our hands were about to touch, the smile on Yang Qingqing's face stiffened for a split second, but she quickly hid it. She shook my hand and said, "You're Zhu brother, so we're not strangers. I'm Zhu close friend and classmate. I'll call you Brother Jiang from now on, okay?" I nodded. Zhu university was right nearby, so it wasn't strange that they were classmates. The young man also stepped up to shake hands. "Hi, I'm Zhang Hai. Just call me Haizi. I really admire our boss." The rest of them also greeted me one by one. Through this, I learned that Yang Qingqing and Zhang Hai were both mutants. Besides them, there was also a short man who was a mutant. The burly man holding the axe wasn't a mutant, but a former soldier working as a security guard. His combat power in the group was second only to the mutants. The last one was an ordinary woman with good athleticism and a rather quiet personality. After the greetings, Zhang Hai sat down next to Yang Qingqing, only to hear her lower her voice, a strange look on her face. "This Brother Jiang is an ordinary person. There's no energy fluctuation on him. Mutants could sense each other's energy fluctuations and even gauge their strength. But on me, Yang Qingqing couldn't sense anything at all. Zhang Hai had noticed it too, but he didn't care. Then that's even more badass. An ordinary person making it all the way to Jinling. "Keep your voice down," Yang Qingqing quickly reminded him, afraid that I or Zhu would hear. She stopped talking to Zhang Hai and turned to look at me. Not a mutant. The Jiang siblings. One is a mutant genius, and the other has absolutely no abilities. How interesting. Thinking this, she leaned back against the soft sofa and pressed it a couple of times with her hand. The seat was very comfortable, but with the impression that I was an ordinary person, combined with the vehicle's beat-up exterior, she wasn't very optimistic about how far it could run. By this time, I had started the mobile base and turned to ask, "Xiaoying, where is your place? Let me check the map for the easiest route." Those zombies are really annoying. For an ordinary person, the word annoying wasn't enough to describe the danger of zombies. Even for them, moving through a zombie horde was extremely risky. But Zhu Ying smiled cooperatively. You even have a map? Haha, let me see. Actually, it's fine if there are zombies. Just roll down the window, and I'll electrocute them all to death, like a machine gun on the vehicle. Hearing her say that, the others all felt like rubbing their ears to see if they had misheard. Normally, if anyone said something like that, they would have been silenced by Zhu Ying's icy glare. But when those words came from my mouth, Zhu Ying supported them unconditionally. Thinking about how the siblings had just reunited, perhaps this abnormality was understandable. I started up the mid-sized bus. Right then, Zhang Hai asked curiously, "Oh right, brother, the vehicle is so spacious inside. Why are you towing a small cargo trailer behind it? What's inside?" I glanced at them through the rearview mirror and replied casually, "Just some luggage. I can't go back to the old house anymore, and there were a few things I couldn't leave behind." Hearing that, Yang Qingqing and the others were all a bit stunned. Who flees for their life while dragging a whole trailer of luggage? Zhu Ying's brother's way of thinking was truly bizarre. A hint of disdain flashed in their eyes, even if they didn't say it out loud. They guessed I must have picked this vehicle up somewhere after the apocalypse. If I was going to pick up a vehicle, I should have chosen something more durable. Instead, it was a rather elaborately modified mobile home. Who knows which rich person was capricious enough to make this before? Yang Qingqing was Zhu Ying's classmate and understood her family background to some extent. To put it mildly, it was average. To be blunt, it was a family that needed financial aid. Thinking of this, she despised me even more in her heart. The apocalypse had just arrived, and the first thing I thought of was getting a mobile home to satisfy the vanity I couldn't afford before. Typical poor person's mindset. And to top it off, I was dragging along a trailer full of useless junk. It was no different from floodwaters rushing in and still trying to run back home to save a wallet. If it weren't for the fact that I was Zhu Ying's brother, they probably would have burst out laughing and mocked me long ago. Seeing them looking awkward, not knowing what to say, I could guess what they were thinking. As for me, I didn't trust these people to begin with. In the apocalypse, who knew what others were capable of doing? It was only because Zhu Ying was here that they didn't dare cause trouble. Mutant beast meat was too great a temptation. Naturally, I wasn't going to tell them what the beat-up trailer they were mocking was actually filled with. Seeing them quickly lose interest in the small cargo trailer, I felt quite satisfied. The bus slowly drove toward the residential area's gate. The others couldn't help but look back, feeling as if a burden had been lifted from their hearts. Finally, they didn't have to come back to this place anymore. Before this, just because of my matter, they had to drop by here once a day after finishing their tasks. If I hadn't shown up today, they would have had to do what they did every day, drag the zombie corpses a bit further away. According to Zhu Ying, doing that was to prevent the area from being swarmed by zombies when I arrived. If this place were actually suitable for living, Zhu Ying would have decided to stay long ago. Watching Zhu Ying excitedly chatting with me, a hint of helplessness flashed in Yang Qingqing's eyes. But completely contrary to what they had imagined, because I chose to take narrow alleys, even if we encountered zombies, Zhu Ying would immediately lean out the window and deal with them right away. And so, this bizarre mid-sized bus smoothly made its way to their base. Of course, it was also because their base wasn't too far from that residential area. Even though the old place wasn't convenient for survivors, for my sake, Zhu Ying had tried to choose the closest possible location. The base of the group, led by Zhu Ying, was located in a luxurious villa district. There was an artificial lake in front, helping to isolate it from the zombies on the streets. This area originally had few residents, so after the apocalypse, there weren't many zombies, and now it had been cleared out. I live in that house, Zhu Ying said while pointing the way, stopping in front of a standalone villa. In Jinling, just the vast lawn around here was enough to make people feel it was a luxury, let alone the 4-story villa towering in the middle of it. When I got here, the house was empty. It was very tidy inside, not dirty at all. It's fully furnished and has lots of rooms, so I decided to stay. I guess the previous owners must have evacuated early, just like Li Yusin's family, so there were no bloodstains in the house. Compared to most other survivors, they really had just woken up from a nightmare. Brother Jiang, you can park on the lawn. It's really spacious over there, Yang Qingqing enthusiastically suggested. I gave her a look and asked, are there any cars left in the garage? Yes, we have a few, she replied. Zhu Ying immediately said, you want to park in the garage? Sure. We usually just park our cars wherever anyway. Heizi, get someone to move the cars out later. Zhang Hai was dumbfounded. Since when did we park our cars wherever? Yang Qingqing felt her suggestion had been ignored. She was a bit annoyed and despised me even more. It's just an old vehicle, yet he insists on putting it in the garage. Even though it wasn't a big deal, she still felt it wasn't worth the fuss. After you park, I'll take you to your room. Even though it's the apocalypse, our living conditions are still pretty good, Zhu Ying said. No need. I'll just sleep in the vehicle. How do you open the garage door? For me, the resting conditions in the vehicle were more than enough. In the end, not only did I set up my sleeping quarters right in the vehicle, but I also took the only garage key. In this villa, they had only found exactly one key. Actually, the starseed in my brain was linked to the mobile base. Without me, no one could drive it, or even open the doors. But I was still careful. Even though this was Zhu Ying's territory, as long as there were other people around, I didn't dare let my guard down. Seeing that I did nothing but fuss over the old bus as soon as I arrived at the base. Yang Qingqing and the others all found it baffling. From the moment she met me, she always thought I was a country bumpkin, treating my old junk like treasure. Maybe I didn't understand anything about mutants. If it weren't for Zhu Ying, they would never have accepted a survivor like me, wouldn't have even spared me a glance. He probably values it so much because he packed all his household belongings in it. And that mobile home, he probably treats it like a precious treasure. But there's no shortage of mobile homes. Yet he chose an old bus to modify. He really doesn't know what's actually valuable. Yang Qingqing said in a low voice to the quiet woman next to her, shaking her head as she spoke. For ordinary people, they could only eke out a living in the apocalypse, which was why they clung to things that made others feel both pity and amusement. Not long after I settled in, Zhu Ying came knocking on the door to call me out for a meal. The garage also had a small door that led straight into the villa. I kept the key to this door as well. Normally, I stayed in the vehicle, practically living in a closed-off space, isolated from the other survivors. The villa was very spacious. Even with over 20 people living there, it didn't feel cramped at all. According to Zhu Ying's introduction, this group had a very clear division of labor. Aside from those taking turns on guard duty, all able-bodied people had to go out and scavenge for supplies. Those without combat capabilities, like the injured or women with weak stamina, would stay behind to cook and clean. When living with a large group, if the logistics weren't handled well, the place would sooner or later turn into a dump. Additionally, the group even had a doctor. This made me marvel. This team was truly well organized. They had everything they needed. At this moment, most of the people were gathered in the main hall, sorting through the items they had scavenged that day. Seeing Zhu Ying lead me over, they all looked up in unison. That's boss's brother, called Jiang Lushi, right? Someone whispered to Yang Qingqing nearby. That's right, she replied flatly. The person immediately showed a look of realization, looking at me with eyes that seemed to say, so this is the guy Yang Qingqing is always complaining about. If you only looked at my appearance, it was indeed hard to imagine I was the weirdo they described. They all saw me step out from the small garage door, further cementing their thought that I had moved in there just for a mobile home. During the time I was in the vehicle, Yang Qingqing and the others had tactfully broadcasted quite a few of my achievements. This gave some people who hadn't even met me a preconceived impression, a weird country bumpkin. Everyone, this is my brother, Jiang Lushi. Zhu Ying introduced me proudly, her tone as if she were showing off a treasure. This statement made quite a few people almost roll their eyes. Hello, brother Jiang. Nice to meet you. Did you really come all the way from Jiangbei? That's awesome. Everyone gathered around to greet me enthusiastically. Even though they thought I was weird in their hearts, they couldn't disrespect Zhu Ying. I just nodded in return. Hello, everyone. All right, let's eat, Zhu Ying said, then turned to me. Brother, eat with me. As soon as she said this, all the survivors were stunned. Yang Qingqing and the others looked at Zhu Ying in surprise. There were 4 mutants in the group, including Zhu Ying. Ordinary people ate in the main hall, while the 4 mutants ate separately in the kitchen. Moreover, the food was completely different. Yang Qingqing couldn't hold back. She smiled and said, Zhu Ying, there's no need for that. Brother Jiang isn't a mutant. Eating it won't have any effect anyway. The others thought the same. Even for an ordinary person, eating it is better than not eating it. Zhu Ying said very naturally. If there was good food, she definitely wanted to share it with me. Hearing this, everyone was speechless. This logic was truly hard to argue with. Is that a problem? Zhu Ying looked around. According to our initial agreement, whether as the leader or based on combat contributions, I get a larger share. I usually use that share to trade for weapons with the military, and everyone uses those weapons. Now I'm taking this share for my brother. Does anyone have an objection? Her eyes turned sharp and cold. I immediately felt the pressure radiating from her. The survivors hurriedly looked away, no one daring to speak up. They were so used to Zhu Ying not using her privileges for herself that they assumed she had given them up. Now that she was using that share for me, they didn't dare be dissatisfied with her, but in their hearts, they were annoyed with me, the beneficiary. Yang Qingqing choked on her words and forced a smile. That's true. Zhu Ying is the one who decides. Let's go, brother. Time to eat. Zhu Ying pulled me along. I looked at their reactions, feeling curious myself. I wondered what was so special about the food the mutants ate separately. An ordinary person like me getting to sit and eat with for mutants made the people watching from the outside feel it was unfair. Normally, if only mutants got this treatment, they wouldn't say anything. But now that an ordinary person was added, feelings of dissatisfaction immediately surfaced. Even so, they could only be jealous that I had such a powerful sister. Brother Jiang, what you're about to eat is probably the most delicious thing you've ever had in your life, Zhang Hai said with a smile as soon as I sat down. Yang Qingqing said nothing, but inwardly sneered. To me, this dish was just tasty, but its true effects were completely wasted. What a waste. Hearing that made me even more curious. Could it be they had a 5-star chef in the team? Not long after, the food was brought out. Zhu Ying immediately put a piece in my bowl. I chewed twice and froze. This flavor, along with the warm sensation spreading through my body. Isn't this mutant beast meat? I immediately grabbed another piece, chewing more carefully this time. It really was mutant beast meat. Seeing me grab a second piece before even swallowing the first, Yang Qingqing and the others all showed looks of disdain. Even if it was delicious, there was no need to eat like a starving tiger. I probably only ate biscuits and instant noodles on the way to Jinling, or maybe even had nothing to eat at all. How is it, Brother Jiang? Delicious, right? Yang Qingqing asked with a smile. I nodded. It's all right. I wasn't sure what kind of mutant beast this meat came from, but compared to the mutant wild-boar meat, it was still a bit lacking. Hearing those two light words, it's all right, Yang Qingqing didn't know what to say. Did I really not understand the value of mutant beast meat? This isn't normal meat. It's mutant beast meat, exclusively for mutants. When mutants eat it, it replenishes their strength and promotes evolution. Or if saved up, it can be traded for weapons with the military. As for ordinary people eating it, it's unclear if it has any effect, Yang Qingqing explained. Evolution? I ignored the last sentence, because ordinary people eating mutant beast meat definitely had an effect, they just didn't know it. As for the concept of mutant evolution, the starseed hadn't explained it clearly yet. Sounds magical, right? Yang Qingqing continued. Mutants can evolve. Using abilities frequently and eating mutant beast meat both promote that process, while also helping to train control. She thought that after hearing this, I would understand that eating this was useless for me, and if I wasn't too thick-skinned, I should voluntarily go outside and eat with the ordinary people. But contrary to her expectations, I nodded as I listened. After she finished, I even grabbed another piece of meat, looked at her, and said, I see. That's really interesting. Keep going. Yang Qingqing choked on her words again. This guy really didn't understand anything at all. And what did he mean by really interesting? Telling her to keep going. Did he think she was a storyteller? I saw her force a smile, her voice a bit reluctant. Actually, there's nothing more to say. It's good that you like eating it. You probably didn't get to eat much on the way. Eat more, Jiang Zhuiying said as she turned her head and shouted. Sis, make us another stir-fried meat dish. Then she turned back to me, continuously putting food in my bowl. Eat a lot, brother. Replenish your nutrition. I noticed Yang Qingqing's expression had turned a bit ugly. Her portion wasn't large to begin with, and she usually had to ration it. Now, seeing an ordinary person like me eating so freely, she felt very uncomfortable inside. Oh right, Zhuiying, didn't you want a custom weapon? Yang Qingqing's eyes suddenly lit up as she spoke. Custom weapon? I was a bit taken aback. Before she could explain, Jiang Zhuing spoke first. It's a weapon custom-made with the military's help. They have the technology, the materials, and the equipment. She continued, seeing that I seemed interested. A lot of survivors in Jinling cooperate with the military. We can scavenge for food ourselves, but we have to trade for weapons from them. The military collects a lot of things, but they always accept mutant beast meat and medical supplies. Hearing this, a question popped into my mind. If the military was around, why didn't these survivors, especially the ordinary people, go with them? Before I could ask, Jiang Zhuing proactively continued. They call it the military, but it's actually just a small leftover outpost. The main force retreated a long time ago. There are only over 1,000 people left. Their area of operation is very limited, and even if they take in survivors, there's a limit. They said they don't have enough manpower to escort everyone to the safe zone, and staying at the outpost, who knows when we'd ever get there. According to her, there was a safe zone near Jinling, built in a treacherous mountainous area. The route was extremely difficult, almost like an isolated island, in an incredibly remote location. So your custom weapon also has to be traded with supplies, right? How much do you need? I asked. A whole 5 tons of mutant beast meat. Zhuing is slowly saving up for it. Yang Qingqing quickly replied, but was immediately cut off by Jiang Zhuing. There's no rush. I've already saved up quite a bit. Speaking of this, she seemed to remember something. She pulled an object out of her pocket, her voice full of mystery. Speaking of mutant beasts, I have something you've definitely never seen before. It's this. Just a small piece of it can be traded to the military for a whole ton of mutant beast meat. What is it? I was curious. Jiang Zhuing placed her fair hand in front of me, smiled, and opened it. Look. I looked down and saw a transparent crystal in her palm. A mutant core? My eyes lit up instantly. My mobile base needed exactly 2 mutant cores to unlock the biological laboratory. Before, I thought this would be as hard as reaching the sky. Killing 1 mutant wild boar was already arduous, let alone 2. When I found out Jiang Zhuing had a whole survivor team, I thought that if I could utilize this force, the efficiency would be much higher. But I didn't expect to see a mutant core appear right before my eyes so quickly. Thinking back, I laughed at myself. If they were eating mutant beast meat, of course there would be mutant cores. Jiang Zhuing's team lived by hunting mutant beasts to trade for weapons, and mutants also needed the meat to evolve. They naturally had to hunt these things. The only thing was, the price the military offered puzzled me. A mutant beast only had 1 core. Its value clearly far exceeded 1 ton of mutant beast meat. What does the military collect this for? I asked. They call it a mutant core. I heard it's used to research the mutant virus, Jiang Zhuing replied. The military only recently came into contact with mutant cores. They're still in the research phase. Hearing that, I understood. It turned out they hadn't realized the true value of the mutant core yet. By the time the military and these survivors figured it out, this thing would definitely become incredibly precious. Is that so? I pondered for a moment, then said, Zhuing, can I discuss something with you? Do we siblings need to discuss things? Just tell me what it is. Jiang Zhuing said as she picked up the mutant core, rolling it around in her hand with an amused look in her eyes. I want this mutant core. It's very important to me. As soon as my words fell, before Jiang Zhuing could even react, the others all looked over in unison. Yang Qingqing's eyes widened in disbelief. She was probably thinking I didn't know what I was saying. That was something worth a whole ton of mutant beast meat, and I was saying it was important to me, even though this was clearly the first time I had ever seen it. The others also frowned. Eating the meat was one thing, but I had just arrived and was constantly making demands. Now I was asking for something so precious. Even though Jiang Zhuing was the leader, she couldn't be this unreasonable. If she gave it to me, her prestige in the team would severely drop. But if she didn't, looking at her attitude toward me, it seemed like she would agree to any request. I continued, Zhuing, don't you need mutant beast meat? I happen to have some. I can trade it with you for this mutant core. I had butchered that mutant wild boar, yielding about 4 to 5 tons of meat. I had eaten a little, but only a very small portion. Jiang Zhuing herself had already saved up quite a bit, so I only needed to offer a portion of it. All eyes were glued to me. From the moment I opened my mouth to ask for the mutant core, every sentence that followed left them stunned. You have mutant beast meat? Where did you get it? Jiang Zhuiying was equally surprised, but since childhood, she had trusted me unconditionally. So even though this sounded very hard to believe, she didn't doubt it at all. The others were completely dumbfounded. Wasn't I just an ordinary person? Wait a moment. I stood up and went into the garage. A moment later, I drove the small cargo trailer out. This trailer was beat up and dented, previously just used to carry miscellaneous items. All the survivors abandoned their meal, gathering at the door, watching me open the cargo box. The door rattled as if it were about to fall off. Large chunks of meat tumbled out. The pork was bright red and firm. Just looking at it made people salivate. A faint aroma spread. Just one sniff and you knew it was mutant beast meat. Jiang Zhuiying's eyes widened, while the others could hardly believe the scene before them. There really was meat, and so much of it. I poked my head out from the driver's seat and asked, "Is this enough?" She stared blankly for a moment, then nodded repeatedly. It's enough, it's enough. How much is here?" She ran over, seeing that the cargo box was still packed full. About 4 to 5 tons. So much. She shook her head in panic. That's too much. I only need 2 tons. I don't need the rest. No need. I'm giving all this meat to you. I had originally planned to hand it all over to Jiang Zhuiying anyway, to prevent others from getting greedy. Sure enough, even though everyone's expressions varied, some didn't believe it, some thought their eyes were playing tricks on them, no one showed any greed. For ordinary people, even if they had the meat, they didn't have the ability to protect it to trade it. As for the mutants, it wasn't worth going against Jiang Zhuiying for this amount of meat. Zhuiying, I want to discuss one more thing. Go ahead. From now on, every time you guys hunt a mutant beast and get a mutant core, can you give it to me? 4 to 5 tons of meat, according to the military's price, could be traded for about 5 mutant cores. And I only needed 2. In everyone's eyes, this action was no different from me practically giving it away out of familial love. Before, they were jealous that I had a good sister. Now, they admired Jiang Zhuiying for having a brother like me. Sure, Jiang Zhuiying replied without hesitation. Brother Jiang, how did you get this mutant beast meat? Yang Qingqing finally couldn't hold back her curiosity. This was also everyone's question. I picked it up. My answer left them speechless. Picked it up? Picked up a whole mutant beast? How do you just pick that up? I was passing by and saw a mutant wild boar that had crashed headfirst into a tree and died. A mutant wild boar? Crashing to death into a tree? The tree should have been the one getting destroyed. But since I said that, they had no reason to doubt it. No matter how they thought about it, they couldn't imagine any other way I could have gotten this much meat. Maybe it really was just that unlucky wild boar, or maybe it fell off a cliff. Luck. It was just ridiculously damn good luck. The mutant core was placed in my hand. Feeling the warm core, I smiled faintly. This thing was truly too valuable. Now, I just needed one more, and my biological laboratory could be unlocked. Having just accumulated enough mutant beast meat, Zhuiying immediately prepared to head out to trade for weapons. She was the leader and also the strongest mutant in the team. The weapons they traded for would directly increase everyone's safety and combat power. Therefore, the mutant beast meat and mutant cores used for trading were originally gathered through the whole team's joint efforts. But now, the whole team practically owed me a mutant core. We're going into the city this morning to trade for weapons. I'll show you when we get back. Early in the morning, Zhuiying knocked on my door, her voice full of excitement. This survivor team was actually stationed in the suburbs of Jinling, still quite far from the city center. Only in areas like this could humans barely manage to survive. The deeper you went into the inner city, the higher the danger level. It was practically a forbidden zone for the living, with some places completely inaccessible. Going into the city was an extremely dangerous endeavor for Zhuiying and her teammates. Jinling originally had a permanent population of about 8 million. Including migrants, it exceeded 10 million. And over 90% of them had probably turned into zombies. The number of zombies was so massive it made you feel like no matter how many you killed, they would never end. Even for mutants, once surrounded in the city, the only outcome was waiting for death in despair. The more you killed, the more zombies would swarm in, only adding to the sense of hopelessness. Not to mention, in Jinling City, the danger didn't just come from zombies. Some mutant beasts also appeared here. They were originally born in the city, and after mutating, They continued to operate among the high-rise buildings, hiding everywhere, making the danger level even higher. However, when Zhu said going into the city, she didn't mean heading straight into Jinling. That would be too reckless. She was referring to a satellite city temporarily built by the military on the outskirts. But even the road leading to the satellite city was far from safe. They had to cross an area with an extremely high density of zombies. This was also why many survivors around this area couldn't go seek refuge with the military. Only teams strong enough like Zhu had the ability to gather the supplies the military needed and conduct trades. If everything goes smoothly, we'll be back in the afternoon. Who knows, maybe we'll even find some tasty snacks on the way to bring back for you. Zhu smiled brightly. No need. I'll go with you guys, I said. The smile on her face instantly froze. 5 tons of mutant beast meat were quickly loaded onto a refrigerated truck. At the same time, 2 other off-road vehicles rolled from the lawn to the front of the villa. One of them was even equipped with a light machine gun. This was the vehicle used to clear the path, and also Zhu personal vehicle. This machine gun was the team's most precious weapon. Because ammunition was incredibly expensive, they rarely used it normally. Yang Qingqing and the other elite fighters sat in the refrigerated truck and the remaining off-road vehicle. The second off-road vehicle had been rather crudely modified. Iron chains with spiked ends hung from the back. Many seats inside had also been removed so the people inside could turn around and attack the zombies chasing them from behind. As for the refrigerated truck, it was reinforced with 2 thick layers of steel. Even though the welds looked pretty ugly and the whole thing was bulky, it was like a solid turtle shell. This was the vehicle protecting the supplies, and these supplies were what the whole team had risked their lives for. Absolutely no losses could be allowed. The whole team was very proud of these 3 vehicles, because they were the guarantee of their survival. But today, as the vehicles were ready to depart, Zhu was nowhere to be seen. The lead off-road vehicle she usually sat in still had an empty driver's seat. Where's boss? Zhanghai asked, probably talking to her brother. They probably have a lot to discuss. Qingqing replied. The door's opening. Guess they're done talking. Zhanghai suddenly spoke up. The garage door slowly opened. Let's get in the cars. Qingqing glanced at the garage, then turned and walked toward the rear off-road vehicle. But right at that moment, she suddenly stopped and turned her head to look. That bus, why is it driving out? Looking closer, Zhu was sitting in the passenger seat. Was I really planning to go with them? Zhu, we're about to head out. Qingqing walked over and said. Zhu sat in the vehicle, looked at her, and nodded. Yeah, it's getting late. But despite saying that, she remained seated in the bus, with absolutely no intention of getting off. He's really going with us? Qingqing didn't know what else to say. Finally, she just gave up. If he wants to go, let him. She couldn't stop him anyway. There's still room in the lead car. Do you and Brother Jiang want to come sit with us? I shook my head. No need. I'll drive my own vehicle. It's fine. We'll drive behind you this time. Just follow the team, Zhu added. Qingqing nodded. When she returned to the off-road vehicle, she lowered her voice and said to the others, Zhu really listens to her brother. This time must have been his idea too. Why tag along? Who knows? The engines of the off-road vehicles and the refrigerated truck roared to life, one after another. I drove my bus, following behind the convoy. Looking at this formation, it really felt very strange. I decided to tag along not just because the road was too dangerous and I was worried about Zhu, but also out of curiosity about the military and the satellite city. I wanted to know what else the military traded with survivors besides mutant beast meat. According to Zhu, their list of needs changed frequently. Even though the military had protected and escorted some survivors to the safe zone, that didn't mean they had completely abandoned the city or humanity's home. Even without considering returning to the city, the massive number of zombies, the ferocious mutant beasts, and the possibility of the virus continuing to mutate in unpredictable ways were all issues that had to be monitored. The military establishing a satellite city in Jinling wasn't just to gather supplies, but also to monitor the city's situation, keep an eye on the zombies and mutant beasts, and provide ample specimens for virus research. That was the true purpose of the satellite city. The convoy quickly left the villa district. The lead off-road vehicle skillfully turned into a small street. After a few turns, the view ahead suddenly widened. They had reached the main road. Right at this moment, I saw the muscular man from earlier pop out of the lead off-road vehicle, taking his position behind the light machine gun. This was the mandatory route to reach the satellite city. According to Zhuiying, the other routes were far more dangerous. Even though this area stretched to the outskirts of Jinling, Jinling was prime real estate, densely packed with residential areas, high-tech zones, and schools. The population was extremely dense, which also meant a terrifying number of zombies. Seeing the muscular man in position and ready, I silently checked the mobile base's status through the control system. Mobile base exterior armor, perfect. Engine system, stable. Air cannon function, operating normally. The system's voice echoed in my head. Zhuiying sat leaning back in the passenger seat, hugging her iron rod tightly, her eyes shining brightly as she looked ahead. Get ready for the show. A show? I was a bit puzzled. The vehicles were driving at high speed. Very quickly, zombies appeared ahead. They were like lost souls, wandering aimlessly on the streets. But upon hearing the roaring engines, they immediately turned their heads to look at the convoy. Their bloodshot eyes locked onto the target, guttural growls escaping their throats, and then they charged forward in unison. As the convoy advanced, zombies continuously poured out from houses and small alleys. In the blink of an eye, front, back, left, and right were completely packed, especially the front, dense as a sea of people. Twisted faces, blood-red eyes, wide-open mouths, blood-soaked gums, with bits of flesh and fresh blood still stuck between their teeth. When there were no living people, zombies only attacked their own kind when they needed to eat. Otherwise, they would wander mindlessly to conserve energy. But as soon as the living appeared, the scene before my eyes would instantly unfold. That massive number created the feeling of falling into a sea of corpses. The mental pressure was so heavy it was suffocating. Everyone involuntarily shuddered. Right at that moment, gunshots rang out. Bang! Bang! The light machine gun spat fire. The front row of zombies instantly fell flat. But immediately after, the zombies' terrifying survivability was clearly displayed. They felt no pain. Unless their heads were blown off, even if they were shot, they would crawl back up and continue charging. One was shot in the stomach, ran a few more steps, and its intestines tore open and spilled out. The smell of blood instantly attracted the zombies behind it to tear it apart. These scenes were all too familiar to the survivors. My expression didn't change. At first, I found it disgusting, but now I had long since grown numb to it. I had seen even more horrifying things. Zhuiying glanced at me. Seeing me gripping the steering wheel steadily with a calm expression, a hint of relief flashed in her eyes. At this moment, the machine gun stopped firing, and the vehicle's speed also slowed down. Ammunition was even more precious than guns. They couldn't just spray it continuously. That last burst was only meant to create a temporary gap. Virum. The refrigerated truck overtook them, becoming the lead vehicle. Zhang Hai sat in the truck, his eyes wide, both hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, his foot flooring the gas pedal. The zombies were so close they were practically touching the vehicle's body. Thud. A heavy collision. The truck swerved but still plowed straight into the middle of the zombie horde, continuously sending them flying. The front windshield was almost completely covered by steel, except for a small slit for the driver's seat, with an iron mesh protecting the outside. Seeing the zombies falling one after another, Zhang Hai was thrilled to the extreme. He slammed the horn and roared, "Damn it! All of you, go to hell." The feeling of driving an armored vehicle and crushing zombies made his blood boil. But the deeper they went, even with the gas pedal floored, the truck's speed still gradually slowed down. The truck was completely surrounded by zombies. Countless dents appeared on the outer steel armor. The pressure from the collisions grew heavier and heavier. Bang! A loud explosion rang out. One of the tires blew, sending up blue smoke. The truck had 12 tires, so it only jolted violently for a moment, but that was still enough to make people start worrying. "Don't worry. It's just a tire," Zhang Hai yelled. Right at this moment, a mutant had already climbed onto the roof of the truck. The off-road vehicle behind also closed in. Yang Qingqing's figure leaped out from the sunroof. The two mutants struck simultaneously. The guy on the truck held a long spear, practically clinging to the edge of the vehicle, every thrust piercing straight through a zombie's head. As for Qingqing, she surprised me. She jumped straight down into the middle of the zombie horde, holding two long knives. The moment she hit the ground, she spun like a top, the cold blades slicing across the necks and chests of the surrounding zombies. Before they could even close in, she sprang up again, landing lightly back on the roof of the vehicle. The entire process took only a second. Her legs were like springs. Their legs mutated. One has foot pads that help him cling to any surface, while Qingqing's leg muscles mutated, allowing her to jump very high. Zhuing explained. I nodded in understanding. This was a localized mutation, matching my previous impression of mutants. But Zhuing was completely different. She was a full-body mutation. All her cells had transformed into electric cells. The more she evolved, the more terrifying the amount of electricity she discharged. No one knew where her ultimate limit lay. Earlier, many zombies hadn't even gotten close to my vehicle before they were scorched to a crisp by the electric currents. The bus simply rolled over them, leaving behind charred black streaks. This level of destructive power was something localized mutants absolutely couldn't compare to. So awesome. Die, all of you. Zhang Hai's excited roar rang out again. With the cover fire from the two mutants, the obstacles in front of the refrigerated truck were quickly cleared. The entire vehicle shook violently as it continued to crush the zombie horde ahead. Zhang Hai's roars echoed throughout the street, as if he couldn't vent all the excitement in his heart without yelling like that. At this time, the lead off-road vehicle had slowed down, running parallel to my bus. Honk! Honk! The off-road vehicle honked twice. Zhuing looked over. The muscular man popped his head out of the sunroof again and shouted, "Boss, there's a massive zombie horde ahead. We're going to speed up. Can you guys keep up?" Zhuing turned to look at me. I shook my head. Tell them not to worry. We can keep up. Zhuing didn't hesitate, turning back to reply, "It's fine. You guys go ahead." The muscular man paused for a moment, then nodded. The off-road vehicles and the refrigerated truck had all been modified, so their speed was naturally faster than normal vehicles. He was worried my bus wouldn't be able to keep up, which was why he drove over to warn us, even mentally prepared to abandon the bus and transfer us to the off-road vehicle if necessary. But seeing that Zhuing had said so, they didn't say anything more. Besides, looking at its exterior, this bus clearly wasn't anything ordinary. It was very likely a high-end modified mobile home inside. The off-road vehicle ran parallel for a bit longer, then suddenly honked continuously. Honk! 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 The other two vehicles responded in unison. All three vehicles accelerated at the same time. From the high vantage point of the bus, my field of vision was much wider. And when I looked ahead, even I was startled. In the distance was a dense sea of zombies, double the number from before. Virum! 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 The engines roared fiercely. The three vehicles spewed black smoke, charging straight into the zombie horde. I still hadn't accelerated right away. The distance between the bus and the convoy ahead quickly widened. Right after, I slammed my foot on the gas. Thud! 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 A few zombies were rammed by the vehicle's body, and right at the moment of impact, the bus's speed suddenly skyrocketed. In the blink of an eye, it caught up with the convoy. No way! Zhuing couldn't help but exclaim. This vehicle accelerates so smoothly, and it's unbelievably fast. I smiled. To me, this was just normal acceleration. If I let her see its true instantaneous acceleration, who knows how shocked she would be. Compared to my mobile base, those off-road vehicles, even modified, were completely out of its league. If it were a real race, they would only be eating dust behind me. Yang Qingqing jumped back onto the off-road vehicle, the two blades in her hands still dripping with thick blood. While accidentally turning her head, she saw the bus tailing closely behind, her eyes revealing clear astonishment. Right at that moment, Zhang Hai shouted from ahead, "Is boss keeping up?" Qingqing looked at the bus and replied somewhat impatiently, "They're keeping up." Just as she was still in a daze, a zombie suddenly sprang up, clinging tightly to the luggage rack at the back of the off-road vehicle, climbing up very fast. The foul stench of blood closing in made Qingqing let out a scream. She immediately spun around, leaped to the back, and plunged her two blades straight into the zombie the moment it flipped over. Bad luck. She kicked the dead corpse off the vehicle. At this point, she had no mind left to pay attention to the bus. Breaking through this zombie horde was dangerous, but as long as they persevered, they would eventually be safe. Some zombies would chase them for a bit, then gradually be left behind, returning to their aimless wandering state. The road ahead would therefore be relatively safer. Fortunately, this dangerous zone wasn't too long. Just over 10 minutes later, the convoy burst out of the zombie horde, entered an open clearing, and stopped. Ching Ching and the others immediately got out of the vehicles to finish off the dozen or so zombies still tailing them. I also drove the bus and parked in the clearing. Is the vehicle okay? Zhu Ying stepped out, walked over, and asked. The two off-road vehicle drivers and Zhang Hai, who had just stepped out of the refrigerated truck, were all checking their vehicle's conditions. The two off-road vehicles only suffered minor damage, nothing to worry about. The refrigerated truck looked a bit more battered, its surface dented and bumpy, but the iron plating was still doing its job, and it could still keep running. The most annoying part was the blown tire. Zhang Hai walked a lap around the truck. Seeing me observing from inside the bus, he laughed heartily. How about it, boss? My truck isn't bad, right? Crushed who knows how many zombies, and it's still this tough. Your tire blew, I reminded him. The tire was completely shredded, clearly bitten through when they were surrounded. Yeah, just a blown tire. No big deal. Zhang Hai laughed out loud, then suddenly asked, Boss, do you know what my ability is? I paused. To be honest, I didn't know. I had seen the other mutants in action, but Zhang Hai had only been driving from the start. So what is your ability? I asked curiously. Hee, perfect timing. Watch closely, boss, Zhang Hai replied, his voice carrying a mixed Beijing accent. I thought he was going to show off something incredible, but after rolling up his sleeves, Zhang Hai pulled a spare tire out of the refrigerated truck. My truck has a few spare tires. A blown tire is no big deal. He said it with full pride. I thought to myself, so blowing a tire happens pretty often then. But I still didn't understand what this ability had to do with tires. Zhang Hai placed the tire in position, used a jack to lift the truck, rubbed his hands together, and warmed up his 10-carat thick fingers. Boss, get ready to see my ultimate move. As he spoke, his hands moved so fast they were a blur. Both his speed and strength were absolutely astonishing. And what he was doing was changing the tire. No wrench, no tools. He used his bare hands to unscrew the bolts, his movements practiced and clean. While doing it, he smugly showed off. See that, boss? My 10 fingers mutated. They're fast and strong. It's all muscle. I stared, dumbfounded. It took me a moment to snap out of it, blurting out, Let me ask you, what did you do before the apocalypse? A mechanic. Zhang Hai laughed loudly. Zhang Hai used to be a mechanic. After mutating into a mutant, he combined his ability with his old trade and continued doing repair work. In terms of combat power, he was naturally stronger than an ordinary person, but among the team's 4 mutants, he ranked dead last. Even so, Zhang Hai's role was incredibly important, because all the vehicle repairs and modifications were handled single-handedly by him. However, with his joking personality and somewhat bizarre ability, Zhang Hai's status in the team wasn't high. Look no further than Yang Qingqing, who almost always showed disdain for him, getting very annoyed every time she talked to him. I thought to myself, this ability definitely isn't just for fixing cars. Just with the force in his 10 fingers, Zhang Hai could absolutely pierce through a human body like a bullet. Hearing me say that, Zhang Hai laughed out loud, then shook his head. I'm not the type who's good at fighting. Once I jump in, I go crazy. I can't keep my rationality. He paused for a moment, his smile gradually fading, his voice dropping low. This was the first time I had seen such an expression on him. I don't know why, but when I fight, the image of my wife reaching out for help in the middle of a zombie horde always flashes in my mind. I had just woken up back then. If I had been a little faster, a little more ruthless. Let's not talk about it anymore. Zhang Hai forced a smile, lowered his head, and continued working. Actually, he knew very well that no matter how fast he was, he couldn't have saved his wife. But knowing it was one thing. Escaping that painful memory was another. Tragedies like that were something almost all survivors had experienced. Just a little further, and we'll reach the satellite city. Zhu Ying walked over with a bottle of water from the off-road vehicle and handed it to me. Everyone took the chance to drink bottled water to replenish their lost fluids and stamina. I noticed the mutants also brought dried mutant beast meat, eating it while drinking water. Using abilities consumed a massive amount of stamina. Only mutant beast meat could quickly replenish their energy. Normal food worked too, but they had to eat a lot of it, which wasn't convenient to carry around. Plus, it didn't help promote evolution like mutant beast meat did. Very quickly, Zhang Hai finished changing the tire. Everyone had also rested and replenished their stamina. The convoy immediately set off again, heading straight for the satellite city. From here, it was only about a 10-minute drive. Along the way, zombies still appeared densely everywhere. Hearing the engines, they swarmed over in droves. From a distance, it looked no different from a surging black wave. Zhang Hai roared like a madman, flooring the gas pedal. Under the cover fire of Yang Qingqing and the other mutants, the refrigerated truck continuously rammed and crushed the zombies, plunging deep into the horde. This time, their luck was pretty good. No more tires blew. It was just that the vehicle's body gained many more dents from the collisions. The satellite city was very close now. They just needed to break through this zombie horde, and they'd be there. Right at that moment, a deep, muffled roar suddenly echoed from an area not far away, as if echoing from deep within a throat. It sounded very close to the convoy. Hearing that roar, Zhuiying immediately sat up straight, her expression tense. She listened a bit more closely, then shouted, "Watch out!" Boom. A group of zombies was sent flying, some even tossed high into the air. Right after, a massive black shadow lunged out, charging straight at the convoy. Its body was as big as an off-road vehicle, and its speed was incredibly fast. Its mouth was wide open, revealing sharp fangs, its eyes blood red. It was a mutant dog. In the city, there were originally many people who kept dogs, and the suburbs were full of strays. After being infected with the virus, most of them turned into zombie-like monsters. Only a small number evolved into mutant beasts, but the one right in front of us was completely different. This size, Zhuiying's expression instantly changed. Mutant beasts came in all sizes, but this was the biggest one they had ever encountered. According to the system's scan results, this was a level 1 mutant dog. The number 1 represented its mutant energy level. But at this stage, the differences in size, strength, and speed created a massive gap in combat power. Even with the same energy level, their actual strength could be completely different. This mutant dog had a gigantic body, terrifying strength, and frighteningly fast speed. The moment it revealed itself, it charged straight toward the convoy. Crash! The mutant dog slammed into the refrigerated truck, knocking the high-speed vehicle sideways, crashing hard into a roadside flower bed. The moment the truck hit the flower bed, the dog lunged forward, unleashing a vicious swipe, its sharp claws flashing. The claws alone were nearly half a meter long. With a loud screech, the outer steel armor of the refrigerated truck was torn like paper, instantly revealing deep gashes. From those gashes, 2 packaged blocks of mutant beast meat fell out. Even the freezer inside was shredded. The destructive power sent chills down everyone's spines. With just the first strike, the mutant dog had displayed a horrifying level of danger. Damn it! Damn it! Zhang Hai roared from the cabin. The refrigerated truck could crush zombies, but in front of this mutant dog, it was no different from a plastic toy. Just a few more hits and the truck, along with all its supplies, would be torn to shreds. The massive mutant dog, almost the size of a truck itself, locked its glowing red eyes on Zhang Hai. Its jaws gaped open, dripping bloody saliva onto the ground. At such close range, Zhang Hai felt his scalp go numb. He let out a roar, slamming the gas pedal to surge forward. The truck scraped against a planter, letting out an ear-piercing metallic screech as sparks flew everywhere. The mutant dog immediately gave chase, leaping up to pounce on the truck. If it managed to get on board, it would be all over. Right at that moment, gunfire erupted from behind. Bang! Bang! The bullets struck the mutant dog, blowing a few bloody holes in it. Awoo! The dog howled in pain and snapped its head around, glaring at the off-road vehicle mounted with a machine gun. The muscular man firing the gun shuddered as the monster's gaze locked onto him. Bang! Bang! The machine gun kept spitting fire, but the mutant dog moved incredibly fast, using the zombie horde as cover. The muscular man could only widen his eyes, watching helplessly as the dog charged straight at his vehicle. Seeing the mutant dog closing in, the muscular man finally lost his nerve. Firing wildly, he screamed, "Drive! Go, go, go! Virum!" The off-road vehicle swerved sharply. The machine gun on the roof swiveled with it, still locked onto the mutant dog and firing nonstop. The turn was so sharp that the wheels on one side lifted off the ground. "Yang Qingqing," the muscular man yelled. The mutant dog was too fast. Even dodging was impossible now. Their only hope was the other off-road vehicle. But inside that car, Qingqing's face had gone deathly pale. This dog was more terrifying than any monster she had ever faced. Getting close or trying to outmaneuver, it was a massive gamble. Its huge size and insane speed meant that even a glancing blow would cause severe injuries. Not to mention its lightning-fast reflexes. If those razor-sharp claws swiped her, she'd be torn to pieces. Despite her own high speed, standing before this monster, she had absolutely no confidence. Hearing the desperate cry for help, even as her car sped forward, Qingqing hesitated for a split second. Her legs felt glued to the floorboards, unable to move. Right then, Virum, the bus behind her suddenly surged ahead, blowing past Qingqing's off-road vehicle. Jiang Zhuiying is making her move. Qingqing immediately thought. In the past, Zhuiying never even needed to step in for ordinary battles. But this time was different. If Zhuiying had to handle everything, what was the point of ability users like them? Zhuiying was the leader not just because she was the strongest, but because in life-or-death moments, she was their only hope. Qingqing stared at the passenger window where Zhuiying sat, a wave of jealousy rising in her chest. Everyone acknowledged and admired Zhuiying. And that was exactly why she always resented me. Zhuiying's overwhelming strength and terrifying abilities made Qingqing feel like God was completely unfair. As much as she hated it, she had to admit the gap was so massive she could never cross it. But what stunned Qingqing was that Zhuiying's window didn't roll down. Instead, the bus barreled straight toward the mutant dog. What the hell was going on? Before the survivors could even process what was happening, BM, an earth-shattering crash echoed out. The bus slammed head-on into the mutant dog. Only then did everyone snap back to reality. The collision couldn't have been timed better. The off-road vehicle and the muscular man narrowly escaped, though the back of their car had been slashed with several horrifying claw marks. In their minds, that crash must have totaled the bus. And this would be the moment Zhuiying had to step in. Before the muscular man could even wipe his cold sweat, he turned to the driver and yelled, "Turn around. We have to pick up the boss's brother." To him, I was just an ordinary guy, easily caught in the crossfire. The bus was wrecked. They had to get me out. But right then, the bus shook violently, suddenly reversed a short distance, then accelerated and charged forward again. This time, the mutant dog managed to dodge to the side, causing the bus to hit nothing but air. What terrified everyone wasn't the miss, but the fact that the bus was still running. That previous collision had completely enraged the mutant dog. It snarled viciously, its glowing red eyes shifting to lock entirely onto the bus. The earlier bullets had only left shallow wounds, mostly grazing its thick hide. This monster was too fast and agile. But the bus's sudden, high-speed ramming had actually hurt it. The bus continuously reversed and accelerated, charging at the mutant dog once again. Right before everyone's eyes, the bus kept swerving, speeding up, and plowing through the zombie horde, crushing countless undead in its path. It was terrifying. Not only was it not shattered, but the front of the bus didn't even have a visible dent. The survivors had no idea that when I previously rammed the mutant wild boar, the windshield had cracked and the front was heavily caved in. But the wild boar was a creature that relied on ramming, packing horrific impact force. This mutant dog, however, was an agility type. Its claws and fangs were its main weapons. Head-on collisions weren't its strong suit. Not to mention, my mobile base's armor had been reinforced after absorbing mutant energy. Its defense was far beyond what it used to be. A series of loud crashes rang out, but the bus remained practically unscathed. The sharp turns and instant acceleration made it as agile as a sports car. The engine roared relentlessly. It was clearly a bus, but it gave off the vibe of a war machine. Inside the bus, I had no time to care about the other's shock. This mutant dog was too agile. The first hit only landed because of the element of surprise. At that time, the off-road vehicle was too close to use the air cannon. Plus, revealing the air cannon in front of them would be too shocking. But ramming and speeding? There was no need to hold back. With its massive size and thick hide, It could take a beating, but its internal organs would still suffer. Being rammed repeatedly would definitely cause its combat power to plummet. I wasn't risking my life to save the off-road vehicle. I just saw a perfect opportunity to strike. From the moment the mutant dog appeared, an indescribable thrill surged within me. To me, this wasn't just danger, it was a stroke of luck. In my eyes, this mutant dog was a second mutant core delivering itself right to my doorstep. Of course, killing it wouldn't be easy. Just then, Zhang Hai drove the refrigerated truck back into the fray. He watched and yelled in sheer excitement. Holy crap, that's badass. So badass. In his eyes, this bus was no different from an armored tank. I kept a cold, focused expression, my eyes locked on the mutant dog. Every turn of the steering wheel, the angle, and the timing were so precise that Zhang Hai couldn't help but marvel. His driving skills are insane. He had no idea I didn't even have a driver's license. It was all thanks to the control system. Zhang Hai hadn't just come back to watch. The ability user on his truck seized the perfect moment. As the mutant dog dodged the bus, he leaped up and thrust a long spear fiercely at it. At the same time, the refrigerated truck sped up, boxing it in from behind. The mutant dog sensed the danger, but in that brief moment of distraction, my bus slammed straight into it once again. Roar. The mutant dog went completely berserk. I didn't give it any chance to counterattack, immediately throwing the bus into reverse to keep my distance. If I let it swipe me a few times, even my bus would have a hard time holding up. Rammed twice in a row, the mutant dog had only one thought left: tear this vehicle and the person inside to shreds. Seeing me back up, it completely ignored the sneak attack from the ability user on the truck and lunged at the bus. The distance was already short. A single leap was all it took. Its jaws opened wide, revealing razor-sharp fangs, intending to crush the vehicle and drag me out. At that exact moment, Jiang Zhuiying appeared at the passenger window. Seeing the dog lunging like a rabid beast, she swung her iron rod hard. Blue and white lightning crackled around the weapon, striking the mutant dog like a thunderbolt. Its massive body instantly stiffened. At the same time, I slammed the gas. The bus accelerated and rammed into it again. The coordination was practically flawless. Jiang Zhuiying struck decisively, her face coldly calm. Only her attacks could truly stop the dog in its tracks. A few more hits like that, and its body definitely wouldn't hold up. This collision was even heavier than the last. Attack! Jiang Zhuiying shouted. I immediately reversed, then swerved to dodge. Bang! 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 Rapid gunfire erupted, bullets raining down on the freshly rammed mutant dog. The muscular man fired while screaming, "Give him a hand." Yang Qingqing. By now, whether it was Zhang Hai or the muscular man, they all understood. Covering my bus was the only right choice. If they let this mutant dog turn its attention back to them, the price would be devastating. So, the whole team quickly synced up. Even though Yang Qingqing was terrified, she was forced to drive forward. Bam! I seized the moment when the dog was forced to dodge the bullets, shifting from reverse to drive and slamming into it yet again. The muscular man flinched and stopped firing, thinking I was insane for charging in while bullets were still flying. Luckily, he didn't hit me. But then he noticed, it wasn't that the bullets missed the bus, but a spiderweb crack had appeared on the bus's window. The bullets had hit, they just couldn't pierce it. Bulletproof glass. The muscular man was utterly dumbfounded. This vehicle was modified to an unbelievable degree. Roar. The mutant dog still wasn't dead. It was knocked flying into the wall of a roadside shop, then staggered back out. The continuous rams hadn't killed it outright, but its body was starting to lose balance. Blood poured from its nose and mouth. Yang Qingqing had barely gotten close when its roar scared her into backing up. The dog ignored her. In its eyes, there was only my bus. Even heavily injured, it was still terrifying enough to send chills down anyone's spine. Compared to Jiang Zhuiying's destructive power, the others had almost no chance of attacking head-on. They could only stall it, relying on Jiang Zhuiying's lightning control and the constant harassment from the three vehicles. No matter how fast the mutant dog was, I kept finding openings to ram it over and over again. It was strong, sure, but it was still a creature of flesh and blood. After a series of frantic collisions, its speed slowed. Its body was riddled with wounds, blood constantly gushing out. Seeing this, the survivors grew excited, their coordination tightening. The tide had completely turned. Especially with the combo of Jiang Zhuiying and my bus, the mutant dog was forced onto the defensive. Both of us were inside the vehicle, so our safety was unquestionable. Virum. Virum. I didn't know how many times I had rammed it. This time, I pinned the mutant dog straight against the wall of a building. The horrific impact shattered the glass facade, raining shards down like a storm. I didn't stop. I kept my foot on the gas, crushing the dog against the wall. If I used the air cannon now, both the wall and the dog would be blown to bits. Screech. The engine roared, tires spinning wildly, burning rubber against the asphalt and kicking up a cloud of dust. The survivors watched in awe, jaws dropping. Through the gaps, they could clearly see the mutant dog's massive body and the pool of blood pouring out from under the chassis. Finally, the engine quieted down, and I slowly backed the bus up. Is it dead? Everyone held their breath, staring intently. As the bus pulled back, the dog's body was fully revealed. Its massive frame was practically flattened. Blood leaked from its eyes and nose, and its body was covered in charred marks from the electrocution, some spots still smoking. Beneath it was a massive pool of blood. Thick, viscous blood clung to the front of the bus, dripping onto the ground. The mutant dog's body still twitched slightly, but I knew it was dead. The refrigerated truck and off-road vehicles pulled up around it. Everyone looked completely drained. Finally, we actually killed it. Aside from the mutant dog, a number of zombies had also been crushed in the chaos. Their bodies littered the area, repeatedly run over by tires, reduced to a gory mess. Holy shit, Zhang Hai muttered, his eyes glued to the mutant dog, still in disbelief. When it attacked him, he thought he was a goner. Yet now, that terrifying monster was nothing but a useless corpse. If my bus hadn't suddenly unleashed its power, what would have happened today? No one dared to think about it. The others stood frozen, staring at the scene. It wasn't until the bus rolled to a stop, crushing a zombie and making the chassis shudder slightly, that they shifted their gaze to me. The front of the bus was still mostly intact, with only minor damage that seemed negligible in their eyes. The windshield just had a few more scratches from claws and a couple of bullet marks. It was a stark contrast to the refrigerated truck. The truck's cargo box had been slashed open by claws, looking like it was about to split in half. One side had been rammed by the mutant dog and was completely warped and deformed. It was just a bus, yet it had been modified into a fortress far sturdier than their refrigerated truck. Its performance was absolutely stellar. Massive, yet incredibly agile. Sitting in the driver's seat, I just let out a soft breath, my expression unchanged. I wasn't flushed from adrenaline, nor pale from fear. Thinking back to how calm I was just now, the way everyone looked at me completely changed. When I decided to join this run, they thought I was joking. They assumed I was a burden who had to rely on Jiang Zhuiying for protection. But reality had laid it bare before their eyes. They were just playing support. I and my bus were the core of the battle. Even though the power mostly came from the vehicle, the driving skills were absolutely crucial. The thick stench of blood filled the air. Jiang Zhuiying glanced around, noticing the zombies starting to close in. She ordered everyone to hold them off, then called Zhang Hai and Matzi to haul the mutant dog onto the refrigerated truck and extract its core while they were at it. My goal from the very beginning, when I decided to ram the mutant dog to death, was its core. Honestly, agile creatures like this always gave me a headache. So this time, the coordination between the ability users and the vehicle maximized our effectiveness. The biggest support role went to Jiang Zhuiying. Spoils were divided by contribution, so it was only natural that she and her brother took the lion's share. Plus, they had promised me a mutant core. Based on my contribution, no one could complain. Zhang Hai and Matzi immediately got to work, their movements practiced and efficient. Zhang Hai plunged his hand straight into the mutant dog's heart, pulling out a blood-soaked core. He washed it off and brought it to Jiang Zhuiying. She just glanced at it, said, "Pretty," and handed it over to me. The core glowed brilliantly like crystal, unbelievably beautiful, even though everyone knew it came from that terrifying corpse. I pulled another mutant core out of my pocket. That made two. After hauling the mutant dog's carcass onto the truck, the convoy left the zombie horde behind and pressed on, looking for a safer spot to make repairs. The refrigerated truck was heavily damaged, mostly the cargo box. Even though the dog's carcass temporarily plugged the gap, it would be exposed again after driving a bit. If they didn't fix it, they'd be dropping supplies the whole way. They had scrap metal and tools in the truck. Zhang Hai grabbed a hammer and started banging away. While everyone was resting and no one was paying attention to me, I took out the 2 cores and called up the system. A slot opened on the dashboard, perfectly sized for the 2 cores. I took a deep breath and placed them inside. The slot immediately closed, and the system's voice chimed in, announcing that new evolutionary options for the mobile base had been unlocked. I skimmed through the familiar list of options. From storage space to weapons, every single one was tempting. But this time, I had a clear goal. I chose to unlock the biological laboratory, using the 2 level 1 mutant cores to activate it. My current combat power relied entirely on the vehicle, while I myself was just an ordinary person. That couldn't last forever. To survive, I needed to become stronger myself, and this was the first step I decided to take. Do you wish to activate the biological laboratory? The biological laboratory has been activated. Please add the following materials to complete construction. The system's voice rang out, followed immediately by a material list so long it gave me a headache just looking at it. Previously, when upgrading the fuel tank, I had to gather quite a few things, so this wasn't new to me. Without materials, the facility couldn't just magically appear. If I wanted to upgrade, I couldn't rely on miracles. But compared to last time, the biological lab's material list was way more troublesome, because it was full of rare materials. Even in peacetime, they were hard to find, let alone now. For example, 100 kilograms of titanium, 1 kilogram of iridium, 120 kilograms of nickel, 150 kilograms of cobalt. Just reading it made my head throb. The satellite city was actually just a small area, looking more like a makeshift camp. The military had set up dense barricades along the road. Behind them were rows of dark gun barrels and tanks, creating a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. As we approached, the convoy began to slow down. I saw a lot of zombies scattered on the road. Some had been dead for a long time, but no one cleaned them up, leaving them to be run over by vehicles time and time again until they were practically glued to the asphalt. Looking at the scene, I couldn't help but shudder. My gaze shifted to the soldiers standing behind the barricades. They were fully armed, their expressions cold, staring intently at my bus and the 3 vehicles behind it. Jiang Zhuing had said we were just here to trade supplies. As long as we had goods, the military was easy to talk to. It was a mutually beneficial relationship. She rolled down her window, didn't stick her head out, but just extended a pale, slender arm into the air. Immediately, a spark of electricity flashed at her fingertips. I clearly saw that when the soldiers saw this, they immediately moved the barricades aside, making way for the convoy. Jiang Zhuiying's electrical ability seemed to have become a calling card. Just seeing it, the military knew it was her convoy. The satellite city was a small street, originally surrounded by residential houses, now completely fenced off into a makeshift camp. The convoy slowly rolled in. There were many ordinary people resting on both sides of the road, their eyes following the vehicles. Blood was still seeping from the cracks in the refrigerated truck, causing clear fear to show on these people's faces. Even though they were protected by the military, they hadn't completely escaped the shadow of the zombies. Seeing a convoy return from the outside brought the horrors of the wasteland right back into their eyes. The camp had over 1,000 soldiers, and with so many resources, they needed a massive logistics workforce. So these ordinary civilians had to work in shifts. The people I saw sitting by the road were just taking a quick break. Jiang Zhuiying pointed ahead, saying the satellite city's headquarters was over there. It used to be a school. The student dorms were now soldier barracks, while the classrooms and offices were used for storing documents and trading goods. The convoy parked in the schoolyard. I got out and immediately noticed a large bulletin board in front of the building. It used to display school notices, but now it was plastered with papers containing entirely different content. I stood there reading them one by one. From lists collecting medicine in exchange for mutant meat and ammo, to batteries, blankets, down jackets, and even mutant cores that could be traded for bulk supplies. Zhang Hai, standing behind me, saw my interest and explained, "This is the military's request list. It lets survivors know what they need. If you bring something they don't want, it's a waste of effort." Usually, the military traded for mutant meat, ammo, and weapons. Ammo was the most expensive, followed by medicine. As for the requested goods, they weren't always easy to scavenge. I nodded but kept reading. I came to the satellite city not just to protect Jiangzhuing, but to see if I could trade for the things I needed. The materials to build the biological lab. If I relied solely on myself or Jiangzhuing's team, it would be almost impossible to gather them all. But here, there might be a chance. I asked Jiangzhuing if we could trade for rare metals here, since the list only vaguely mentioned other items. She replied that the military definitely had all sorts of materials. If they didn't have them on hand, as long as we brought what they needed, they would issue a request to collect them from other survivors. Hearing that, I felt relieved. Zhang Hai looked at me with a puzzled expression, not understanding why I needed rare metals. But he didn't ask further. His attention was quickly drawn back to my bus. Finally, unable to hold back his curiosity, he asked me where I got that vehicle. He praised it as being absolutely top tier, saying whoever modified it was definitely a master. If he had the chance, he'd love to meet them and learn a thing or two, hoping the person was still alive. Hearing that, I thought to myself, of course I'm still alive, but as for how the vehicle was modified, even I couldn't answer that. The soldier, seeing me hand a bag of dried mutant meat to the old man, chimed in with some advice. Buddy, giving this precious mutant meat to an old man is a real waste. You'd be better off trading it for a lot more regular rations. We can help you with that. Actually, the military wouldn't bother with such small trades. This was just the soldier's personal suggestion. Even though he wasn't an ability user, if he kept this mutant meat, he could trade it for some useful things from other survivors, like a few packs of cigarettes. The military had plenty of supplies, but they didn't belong to individual soldiers. They lived on a salary and were only issued a set amount of rations each month. So if they could earn a little extra on the side, it was obviously a good thing. The soldier felt his suggestion was very reasonable, but I just smiled and said it was fine. I had plenty of regular food, some of it even nearing its expiration date. It'd be a waste not to eat it. My fridge was so full it couldn't hold anymore. Just follow me for a bit. I'll give you some extra food. My whole car is packed full. There's not even room on the roof. Hearing that, the soldier didn't say anything else. From my tone, he guessed I had a massive amount of supplies. A fridge not being able to hold it all wasn't surprising. The old professor, hearing those words, was incredibly shocked. Is this bag of jerky really mutant meat? At first, he thought it was just beef jerky. He had seen mutant meat before, but this was his first time holding it in his own hands. This kind of meat was meant for ability users. Even in the military, it was considered a precious asset. In the apocalypse, mutant meat and ammo were as valuable as gold in peacetime. Normally, he only ate coarse rations. Getting a piece of regular meat was already a luxury, let alone mutant meat. As much as he wanted it, he still shook his head, refusing to take the bag and waving his hands repeatedly. I can't accept this. It's too precious. It's not right to take something for nothing. I told him to just take it, that this little bit of meat was nothing. Besides, I wanted to ask him a few things. Hearing that, the old man still didn't take it, asking what I wanted to know, saying an old man like him might not be able to help. I asked if he knew anywhere in Jinling where I could find these metals, then read off the entire list of materials I needed. I asked just to try my luck, since he was a local with broad knowledge and might know. Earlier, the old professor had heard me mention these metals when talking to the soldier, but hadn't thought of anything then. Now being asked directly, he frowned in deep thought, muttering a few locations to himself before shaking his head, sighing that he was old and his mind wasn't as sharp anymore. Suddenly, his cloudy eyes lit up. He said he remembered now. A few years ago, a new industrial park was built, and inside it was the Jiangnan Special Metals Science Company. Their headquarters and warehouses were all there. A warehouse for a company specializing in special metals would definitely have the materials I needed, maybe even a surplus. It was just that iridium was very rare, so the chances of finding it weren't high. I needed too many materials to build the biological lab, and the military couldn't provide enough. I never expected an old professor to point me in the right direction. He smiled apologetically, saying he had never been to that industrial park, so he couldn't draw me a map. But I said it was fine, I could find it myself. I was overjoyed. No need to post a request and wait anymore. Having a clear target made things much easier. I quickly shoved the bag of mutant meat into the old professor's hands. He hurriedly caught it, about to refuse, but the savory smell of the meat made his stomach involuntarily rumble a few times, embarrassing him greatly. He looked at me with deep emotion, thanking me repeatedly, saying this was more than enough and he really didn't need anything else. Every day he wandered the camp, occasionally giving survivors a bit of advice. But most people just saw him as a useless old man. The polite ones would smile and brush him off, while the harsher ones told him to get lost. He mostly did farming work to kill time, and chatting with survivors was his only way to relieve stress. He never thought anyone would repay him after being helped, which made him even more grateful to me. To me, finding a lead on iridium and the other metals was a massive breakthrough. This little bit of food was nothing compared to what I got in return. Seeing that he had refused so firmly, I didn't push it further, just hoping the mutant meat would help nourish him so he wouldn't look as frail as he did now. Right then, Jiang Zhuiying's voice called out to me, telling me to hurry over and look at something. I replied and walked over. She and the team were gathered around a table. Even the other survivors in the hall curiously crowded around to watch. She was probably trading for a weapon. Whenever I was around, Jiang Zhuiying always wanted my opinion before making a decision. It had become a habit, even though she knew best what kind of weapon suited her and had surely calculated it carefully. The crowd automatically parted to make way for me, their curious eyes following me. Especially the soldier from earlier. He originally thought I was just a regular member of the team, never expecting me to be Jiang Zhuiying's brother. The other survivors were also puzzled, because I was just an ordinary person, yet Jiang Zhuiying and her team naturally coordinated with and respected me. Yang Qingqing and her group had looked down on me before, but after today's battle, they realized who the real weakling was, so they didn't have any more insults to throw. Jiang Zhuiying held up a long katana and called me to look. The blade was about 1.5 meters long. Katanas originally came from the Tokugawa era, but this sword was a custom-made weapon from the military. She had placed a deposit on it earlier, and now she had finally gathered enough mutant meat to trade for it. This katana was clearly different from ordinary ones. I took the sword, and the moment I held it, I could feel that its material was absolutely extraordinary. The cold, sharp light reflecting off the blade showed superior hardness and durability. There were intricate patterns on the blade, and the hilt connected to the blade with spiral grooves, also made from the same special alloy. A diamond-shaped metal ring was attached to the pommel. The total length of the blade and hilt was nearly 1.7 meters, almost as tall as Zhuiying. The soldier sitting behind the desk took the initiative to explain that this sword was forged from a special alloy steel, highly heat-resistant, and most importantly, had exceptional electrical conductivity. I nodded. This was clearly a weapon custom-designed for Zhuiying, perfectly suited for her electrical abilities. Although it was called a samurai sword, it was actually an improved version of the Tang Dynasty swords that Tokugawa had developed. A long, razor-thin blade, specially used in the military. Fast and sharp. When combined with electrical conductivity, it became a terrifyingly lethal weapon. The soldier then brought out a heavy alloy box and slammed it onto the table. Inside was a long chain, about 4 to 5 meters long, with a clasp at the end to connect to the metal ring on the sword's hilt. He said this chain was also made of a special alloy with excellent conductivity, and the entire sword was the result of incredibly meticulous craftsmanship. Dozens of workers had to work overnight to finish it. This kind of material was almost impossible to find anywhere else. In the post-apocalyptic world, where both resources and manpower were scarce, forging such a weapon obviously came at a steep price. I glanced at Zhuiying and saw her eyes light up as she looked at the sword. She was clearly very satisfied. "Buy it," I said without hesitation. The soldier immediately replied that the price had already been agreed upon. They just needed to add 5 tons of mutant meat. He asked if we brought it. Hearing that number, the surrounding survivors all showed looks of envy. Just one sword cost 5 tons of mutant meat. If traded for regular food, how many people could that feed? I replied that we brought it, and even had a surplus, because the giant mutant dog we took down on the way provided a massive amount of meat. When the military went with Zhuiying to collect the meat, the curious survivors stood by to watch. As soon as the refrigerated truck's doors opened, the massive, horrifying head of the mutant dog rolled out, startling even the soldiers into almost drawing their guns. Realizing it was just a monster's corpse, everyone let out a breath. Blood was still dripping from its eyes, ears, nose, and mouth, not yet coagulated. It had clearly been killed recently. The body of the refrigerated truck was covered in terrifying claw marks. Even though it had been reinforced, the damage was still glaringly obvious. The sight left everyone terrified of the mutant dog's ferocity, while also in awe of the strength of Zhu Ying and her team for being able to take it down. While everyone was still in shock, Zhang Hai had already climbed into the truck bed. A heavy thud echoed as a massive chunk of mutant meat was thrown onto the ground. Immediately after, a series of heavy thuds followed as large chunks of meat were continuously tossed out. At first, people didn't react, but as the pile of meat grew higher and the mutant dog's head still dangled in the truck, they started to realize something wasn't right. It was too much. Initially, everyone assumed the mutant dog's head was the main part of the 5 tons of meat used for the trade. Even the military soldiers thought so. But as the meat kept being thrown out, they realized that those chunks were the actual meat for the trade, and the mutant dog was just extra loot we hunted on the way. Very quickly, the meat piled up into a small mountain. Zhu Ying calmly stated that we were ready and they could weigh it. The military's large scale was brought over. The soldiers quickly weighed out 5 tons, and there were still quite a few chunks of meat left untouched. 5 tons was enough. The rest was completely surplus. Only then did everyone understand that when I said surplus, I wasn't referring to the mutant dog, but the amount of meat we had prepared beforehand. The soldier finished his notes, said the meat was enough and the sword was ours, then glanced at the mutant dog and asked what we planned to trade it for. Yang Qingqing and the others stayed silent, because they only got a very small share in this battle and had no right to decide. All eyes turned to Zhu Ying. But she turned to look at me and said that this mutant dog was mostly taken down by her brother, so whether to sell it or not was up to me. Instantly, all eyes focused on me. Some survivors, and even a military soldier looked bewildered. I took it down. Wasn't I just an ordinary person? The ability users present could all sense that I didn't emit any energy fluctuations. I was completely just a normal guy. An ordinary person took down a mutant dog? They might not know much, but this was clearly too hard to believe. Even though the soldier wasn't an ability user, hearing Jiang Zhuying's words still gave him a shock. He had interacted with Zhu Ying's survivor team a few times and knew very well that she was the strongest in the group. Every time she brought back a large amount of supplies, the team formation remained unchanged. That alone showed that among the ability users in Jinling, Zhu Ying belonged to the absolute top tier. If that weren't the case, an ordinary survivor team, let alone the members, even the leader could be replaced after every run. Supplies fluctuated. They were never as stable as her team. This time, they had clearly far exceeded expectations. The soldier couldn't help but grow suspicious. Could this man in front of him be even stronger than Zhu Ying? Was he really the one who took down that mutant dog? Was he even stronger than her? I looked at his eyes and knew immediately he had misunderstood, but I couldn't be bothered to explain. We're not selling this meat for now, I said, then turned to Zhu Ying and Yang Qingqing. If you want to sell your shares, go ahead. Hearing that, the muscular man and the others exchanged glances and shook their heads repeatedly, saying they didn't need to. Yang Qingqing also said she didn't need to, but as she bit her lip and looked at me, her eyes were clearly filled with mixed emotions. My tone was calm, and Zhu Ying's handling of things was decisive. They sounded different, but at their core, they were the same. Yang Qingqing was used to being ordered around by Zhu Ying, but right now, she felt like I was the one holding the reins. In this situation, the advantage clearly leaned toward me. But if it were anyone else, usually the team leader would be the one to make the call first. Yet Zhu Ying not only yielded authority to me in this matter, but even in things that had nothing to do with me. Actually, Yang Qingqing wanted to trade for some supplies, but seeing that no one else was trading and her share was too small, she didn't want to cause trouble. So, that frustration subconsciously shifted onto me. He's not even part of the team, yet he's giving orders, she thought bitterly. Not trading. The soldier looked at the mutant dog's corpse, clear regret showing on his face. Normally, survivor teams rarely brought back this much mutant beast meat, unless they wanted to trade for a massive amount of ammo or make a major transaction like Zhu Ying's today. For teams with ability users, Mutant beast meat was incredibly important. An intact mutant dog was extremely valuable. If they could trade for it, the military base would have hit the jackpot today, but unfortunately, it didn't pan out. He could only say that whenever we wanted to trade, we could just come back. Just as Zhu Ying had said, the military's attitude toward us was very friendly. Because they needed supplies, and cooperating with survivors was much faster than scavenging themselves. There was absolutely no need to create conflict. Right then, I suddenly asked, "What's the current situation?" Previously, Starseed had told me that after the apocalypse broke out, the world would quickly collapse, but didn't specify how. The military represented the government, and before the apocalypse, they had stored a lot of crucial technology. They definitely had a grasp on the situation. The safe zones and safe islands must still be in contact with each other. Even though it was just a guess, I still wanted to hear a concrete answer. The soldier hesitated a bit, because they usually avoided talking about the situation with survivors to prevent spreading despair. But with people like us who had been surviving outside the city, it was different. He said there were many things he wasn't sure about himself, only knowing that the safe zones were researching mutant beasts, because these monsters were getting stronger and evolving very fast. Just a few short sentences, but the meaning was crystal clear. The military had no plans for a counterattack. They were solely focused on holding the safe zones. Survivors either entered the safe zones or found their own way to survive. Ordinary people could still think about getting in, but what about ability users? They were forced to hunt mutant beasts to continue evolving. Furthermore, there were already so many survivors like that in the camp, yet the military still hadn't taken them away. Perhaps they didn't want to take in any more. I looked at my watch and said it was getting dark, so we should get going. When night fell, the whole city would be overrun by monsters. They were even more aggressive than during the day. Traveling at that time was basically a death wish. On the way back, I told Zhu Ying what I had learned from the old professor about the metals. She was still engrossed in admiring her new sword. Hearing me mention the national lab at the university, she looked up in surprise and asked what I needed that stuff for. I just replied that I had a use for it, then asked if she knew the situation at Jinling University. She thought for a moment, then said there probably weren't any significant supplies left, and there were a lot of zombies, so she hadn't gone back. The general situation could be summed up in one sentence. Zombies were everywhere. There were too many teachers and students. The campus was definitely crawling with the undead. Hearing that I wanted to go, she immediately said she would go with me, but I told her we'd see. I asked again about the special metals company in the Jinling Industrial Park. She thought for a long time, then frowned and said she wasn't sure, suggesting I ask Yang Qingqing since she was a Jinling native and probably knew better. I nodded. It would be much easier to handle if we could find the exact location. The trip back was much smoother, but by the time we returned to the villa area, it was already dusk. Darkness was about to fall. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief, thankful we made it back before nightfall. The survivors who stayed behind at the villa were waiting anxiously at the gate. Even though Zhu Ying's group made up only a small fraction of the total survivors, they were the entire combat force of this place. If Zhu Ying and her team ran into trouble, the people left behind really wouldn't know how to defend themselves. When the convoy appeared in sight, the tension finally eased. However, many quickly noticed that the lead vehicle was my bus, not the refrigerated truck as usual. Normally, the refrigerated truck was sturdier and could take more of a beating, which was why it took the lead. When the vehicle stopped at the gate and they saw the miserable state of the refrigerated truck, everyone collectively gasped. That truck had really taken a beating. No wonder it couldn't lead anymore. Zhu Ying and the others got out of their vehicles one by one. The survivor group immediately and automatically gathered around. Refueling, cleaning, maintenance, and unloading cargo were all handled by the non-combatants. Vehicle repairs and modifications were left to Zhanghai. No one else could handle that anyway. Zhu Ying mentioned there was a mutant beast in the truck and told them to process it. Butchering and salting meat was a tedious job, so naturally, it fell to those not in the combat group. Here, Zhu Ying never kept freeloaders. Before, some people thought I was an exception, a freeloader who appeared out of nowhere. But after today, probably no one would think that anymore. Even though I looked like I had nothing to do with those chores right after getting back. I told Zhu Ying I was heading back to the garage first, then turned and walked inside. Zhanghai called after me, saying he'd help me fix the bus later, but I waved him off, saying it wasn't necessary. The mobile base wasn't within his area of expertise. Letting him touch it might just end up costing me more in repairs. According to Starseed's report, the vehicle didn't need urgent repairs right now. The damage was purely cosmetic, and whether my vehicle looked good or bad meant absolutely nothing to me. Watching the bus roll into the garage and the doors close, a few survivors looked awkward. With Zhuiying there, they didn't dare say anything, but in their minds, they were all thinking, asterisk, does that bus really need repairs? It looks perfectly fine, clearly well protected, asterisk. By now, a few people had opened the doors to the refrigerated truck. A gasp of shock rang out. Even though they were mentally prepared and knew what was inside, seeing it with their own eyes still made them instinctively take a step back. The mutant dog was too terrifying. Ordinary people like them couldn't even imagine facing such a monster. Someone muttered that the heavy damage to the truck must have been caused by this beast. The battle must have been incredibly dangerous, yet now it lay here obediently. He even reached out and patted the dog's head, his face a mix of nervousness and excitement. For someone who would tremble at the sight of just a few zombies, being able to stand before the corpse of a mutant dog and butcher it into chunks of meat was truly an unprecedented feeling. He knew it was all thanks to Zhuiying and the others, so he couldn't stop showering them with respect and praise. The people around him chimed in, not just flattering, but genuinely awestruck. Yang Qingqing's expression, however, soured. Before they could finish, she cut them off, saying she was tired and heading back to the villa to rest, not even looking back. Those praises made her uncomfortable. The muscular man and a few others looked awkward. One ability user coughed lightly and said, actually, the one who played the main role in taking down the mutant dog was Zhuiying's brother. The survivors were stunned for a moment, then quickly turned to Zhuiying and cheered, praising how amazing they were. They laughed and said the Jiang siblings were truly formidable. Neither of them was simple. They said that, but their eyes never left the mutant dog's corpse, full of disbelief. They had heard Yang Qingqing say, I was just an ordinary person like them. But an ordinary person managed to kill a monster that made them tremble just looking at it? From a distance, I even heard Yang Qingqing mutter, it's just because he has a good car. Inside the mobile base, the lights were soft and the space was warm. The luxurious equipment stood out even more. Compared to the bloody and horrifying scenes outside during the day, this place was incredibly safe and peaceful right now. The bathroom door opened. I had just finished showering, steam still clinging to my body. I was completely relaxed, every pore feeling comfortably open. Lying on the bed, I stared at the ceiling of the bus. The name, Jinling University, popped into my head. Today I had obtained 2 mutant cores, and the biological lab had started construction. The excitement made it hard to sleep. I had witnessed the power of ability users with my own eyes. Before, that guy Brother Wu was weak, but his speed still left an impression. And today, especially Zhuiying's power, truly amazed me. Unlocking the biological lab wasn't just to quickly boost my own strength for peace of mind, but also because I was extremely interested in those special mutant abilities. Once an ordinary person gained mutant powers, they were no longer ordinary. I had made up my mind. Tomorrow morning, I would set off for Jinling University. Just then, Zhuiying's familiar, drawn-out voice called from outside the garage, telling me it was time to eat. The corners of my mouth involuntarily curled up. Even though we were in the apocalypse, in this very moment, it felt like nothing had changed. When I walked into the main hall, the survivors were all having dinner. I noticed that the moment I appeared, everyone's eyes locked onto me. They had smiles on their faces, but their gazes were mixed with astonishment, as if they were witnessing something unbelievable. They already knew the mutant dog was mostly rammed to death by me. Everyone had seen the corpse with their own eyes, and the more terrifying the monster, the more shocked their looks became. I glanced over everyone, then quickly walked through the hall straight into the dining room. Being stared at by so many people made me quite uncomfortable. In the dining room, everyone was seated and the food was laid out, but no one had touched their chopsticks. It wasn't that they were waiting for me, but because Zhuiying hadn't started eating yet. She was waiting for me, and since she hadn't eaten, naturally no one else dared to start. I sat down, looked around, and said, sorry for the wait, go ahead and eat. Hearing me say that, Zhuiying obediently picked up her chopsticks. The others also began their meal. She didn't eat right away, but first piled a mountain of food into my bowl until there was barely any room left, telling me to eat a lot. I told her to eat too. Last time we ate together, I noticed that ability users ate much more than ordinary people. One person could eat 2 or 3 times as much and still not feel full. They just usually held back to save food. But Zhuiying was different. Before, she starved herself to trade for a weapon. Now that she had the weapon, and a whole mutant dog on top of that, there was obviously no need to hold back. Eating more mutant meat meant faster evolution. I cared even less about saving food. I had plenty of mutant meat on hand right now. I could eat as much as I wanted. Even though building up physical strength was a long-term process, there was no reason not to eat a lot when it was both delicious and beneficial. Yang Qingqing watched the two of us eat freely. Her stomach gave a soft rumble, but she put down her chopsticks and said she was full, feeling a wave of self-pity. While eating, Zhuiying suddenly remembered what I had mentioned and asked if I wanted to go to Jinling University. I had said later before, so she kept it in mind. Zhuiying always paid attention to everything about me. The two of us relied on each other to survive. In her memories, the most vivid things were my care and the times I teased her. Even if she didn't say it, every action showed it. I originally planned to bring it up after dinner, but I didn't expect her to ask right now. She asked when I planned to go and if it was urgent. I replied, the sooner the better. I'll go tomorrow. Zhuiying picked up another piece of meat, glanced at the others at the table, and declared, then we're going to Jinling University tomorrow. Everyone get a good rest tonight. Everyone froze. If it was Zhuiying who wanted to go, no one would question it. She was the leader. As long as she didn't lead them to their deaths, they'd go anywhere. Most of the effort to keep the survivor group going was thanks to her, so she had absolute authority. But everyone had just heard clearly. This trip was my idea. Yang Qingqing curiously asked why we were going to Jinling University, her eyes full of suspicion. In her view, I wasn't from the university, and the place was now crawling with zombies. She really didn't understand what I wanted to do there. I just said there were some things in the lab that were very useful to me. I couldn't exactly explain the details about the mobile base. Hearing that, Yang Qingqing felt even more confused. She thought to herself, what's left in a lab besides chemicals? If Zhuiying wasn't there, she probably would have shown her disdain. She was about to add that we didn't necessarily have to go to the university, but before she could finish, Zhuiying cut her off. Zhuiying said this was a minor matter and didn't need discussing. Just grabbing an item didn't require a debate. She didn't care what I needed or what it was for. As long as I said I needed it, they would go find it. Knowing me, she knew I wouldn't cause trouble over something useless. If I said I needed it, it definitely had value. As the leader, Zhuiying had full decision-making power. Normally, where the team went and what they did was all up to her, let alone this. Being shut down like that, Yang Qingqing felt incredibly uncomfortable. They were the same age and went to the same school, yet Zhuiying held the command. Even though she seemed approachable on the outside, she was decisive and didn't spare anyone's feelings when it came to business. Right now, Yang Qingqing felt like she had just lost face. The other ability users and the survivors in the hall seemed to be looking at her with mocking eyes. Zhuiying didn't care. She finished her last bite, wiped her mouth, stood up, and said that she originally owed me a mutant core. Today, based on contributions, the core from that mutant dog should belong to me. So technically, the team still owed me one more. After saying that, she pulled me up to leave the dining table. I asked her if Yang Qingqing's objection meant the others didn't want to go either. Zhuiying smiled and replied, so what if they don't want to go? If I go alone, why would I need to keep them around? They don't have to go, but when I get back, there won't be a place for them anymore. Those ability users can't survive on their own. Hearing that, I chuckled, reached out, and patted her head twice. Good job. Thinking for a moment, I asked, where's your storage room? Oh right, where's your storage room? I asked. Watching Zhuiying and me leave, Yang Qingqing withdrew her gaze, her face sour. She muttered angrily under her breath, that guy is so annoying. Can't you all see? Ever since he got here, Zhuiying has been completely biased toward him. The more she spoke, the angrier she got, complaining that all I had going for me was that vehicle. Zhang Hai and the others stayed silent. Yang Qingqing grew even more furious, stood up abruptly, and stormed off, cursing them in her head for being a bunch of cowards. Meanwhile, I was inspecting the storage room. I always valued supplies. I knew I'd get the lion's share of today's mutant dog, but I still wanted to see exactly how much and what it looked like with my own eyes. These were crucial assets. The survivors processed the meat very quickly and cleanly. The chunks of meat were stacked neatly and looked quite appetizing. I nodded in satisfaction. This mutant dog was almost as big as the mutant boar. My share was about 3/4, and the rest mostly went to Zhuiying. As I was admiring the haul, I suddenly heard voices outside the door. A woman's voice said, "It's quiet here. If you have something to say it here." Immediately after, Yang Qingqing's voice rang out, full of frustration, complaining about that country bumpkin. I wasn't planning to eavesdrop, but hearing my name made me stop in my tracks. She said Zhuiying, and I were going too far. I stepped closer to the door and looked through the peephole. I saw Yang Qingqing talking to another woman. I vaguely recognized her, an ordinary person with decent stamina, quiet, and didn't seem very approachable. Yang Qingqing said Zhuiying decided the whole team had to go tomorrow to escort her brother to Jinling University. The other woman asked in surprise why. Yang Qingqing snapped, "Who knows?" then continued to vent, saying I wasn't even part of the team. He just eats and hides in that bus all day, treating it like some treasure and not letting anyone near it. When we go out, only Zhuiying gets to ride in it. The more she spoke, the angrier she got, especially remembering how Zhuiying had cut her off. Initially, Yang Qingqing disliked me mostly because she disliked Zhuiying. She had hoped that Zhuiying's brother, an ordinary person, would be looked down upon by others. But before long, I made everyone change their view of me. Thinking of my vehicle, Yang Qingqing briefly entertained the thought of taking it for herself, but immediately realized she was a terrible driver. No matter how powerful a vehicle was, it was useless if you couldn't drive it. So she came up with another plan. She figured that if I wanted the whole team's help, I had to consider myself part of the team. The vehicle should become communal property. Everyone could choose the driver, and even if it was still me, it had to be shared. She calculated that just riding in that bus would be vastly safer than the off-road vehicle, especially after the battle with the mutant dog yesterday. The other woman asked if I would agree. Yang Qingqing sneered, saying with my stingy personality, definitely not. But she didn't believe she was the only one thinking this. She planned to rally everyone to propose it together. When the time came, Zhuiying wouldn't be able to ignore it. If Zhuiying disagreed, she'd lose their trust. In the end, she'd have to hand over the bus. Yang Qingqing said she was going to sleep and would talk to the other ability users tomorrow. This was for the benefit and safety of the whole team. No one would object. Then she let out a meaningful laugh. Who knows? Maybe he'll get bitten to death by zombies. He's just an ordinary guy, after all. The other woman froze for a moment, then smiled too. Perhaps that last sentence was the real point. When they left, I stepped out of the storage room. Looking in the direction Yang Qingqing had gone, my heart sinking. She probably thought I had gone back to my room, never expecting me to be here. I rubbed my chin. I didn't expect her to try and stir up trouble. In my eyes, from beginning to end, she barely had any presence at all. The night at the villa wasn't quiet. The distant howls of zombies still echoed, sometimes loud, sometimes soft, sending chills down the spine. Even though everyone knew zombies wouldn't come as long as there was no loud noise or bright light, and there were constant guards, many still couldn't sleep peacefully. Even so, they were the lucky ones in this apocalypse. Lying in bed, I heard the howls too, but only paused for a moment before going back to watching my movie. As I watched, I wondered if movies could be used to trade for supplies later, whether with the military or other survivors. As long as I found a few USB drives, I could copy them endlessly. I woke up early the next morning. I hadn't gone to sleep early last night, but I slept very deeply. Sleeping in the mobile base always gave a much stronger sense of security. At breakfast, I greeted everyone, and a few replied. I glanced at Yang Qingqing. She looked at me and smiled in greeting. I smiled back, my expression even friendlier than before. Yang Qingqing was momentarily taken aback, not understanding why I suddenly smiled at her, but she didn't overthink it. Today she was going to talk to the other ability users to pitch her proposal. When that time came, she wondered if I'd still be able to smile. I just smiled at Yang Qingqing and then ignored her. I had heard her intentions loud and clear yesterday. During breakfast, I took out a map and placed it on the table. This was today's route. I had cross-referenced this map with the data downloaded on my tablet. The old professor had marked the major landmarks along the way in great detail. After comparing them, there were almost no errors. I said this route was relatively safer and might have fewer zombies. But in reality, once you entered a densely populated zombie area, nowhere was truly safe. Just like yesterday, we still unexpectedly ran into a mutant beast. Zhang Hai reported that the refrigerated truck had been repaired overnight and could run normally today. The muscular man also said the machine gun was checked and ammo was fully stocked. I nodded, reminding everyone to be extra careful today. The best outcome was to go and return safely. Jiang Zhuiying stood up, hugging her long katana. She wore custom military boots, a tight-fitting t-shirt, and her hair tied in a ponytail. Her youthful vitality combined with the terrifying cold weapon made it hard to look away. Looking at her today, even I couldn't help but be impressed. I didn't know if it was due to evolution, but her aura was becoming more and more unique. "Let's move out," she said simply. Sitting in the transit bus, her face was full of excitement. With a new weapon in hand, today was clearly the time to test its power. But as the convoy neared Jinling University, she grew quiet, saying she had left the school before the apocalypse hit. She didn't know what the situation there was like when the disaster broke out, and felt lucky because of it. She didn't have to face the horror of fighting classmates turned zombies. I looked at her and said that with a school that big, it must have been chaos. Even if she had been there, she wouldn't have been able to do anything. She nodded. Those thoughts just flashed by and vanished. As the convoy approached Jinling University, the number of zombies rapidly increased. The refrigerated truck took the lead. The ability users on the two off-road vehicles started attacking. Screams and crashes echoed endlessly. Finally, we stopped in front of the school gate. Dozens of zombies dressed as students and security guards blocked the way. The boom barrier was tilted and creaking, the school gate stained with dried, brownish-red blood. Half a corpse, stripped to the bone, hung from it. Hearing the vehicles, the zombie horde turned their heads. Jiang Zhuiying let out a sigh of relief and signaled to clear the way. The refrigerated truck plowed straight into the barrier and the zombies. The steel spikes Zhang Hai had added after yesterday's mutant dog battle proved their worth. They prevented the zombies from clinging to the truck while inflicting massive damage. The smell of blood immediately drew more of their kind. Compared to my transit bus, the refrigerated truck was still much weaker. Zhang Hai drove in silence the whole way. The National Laboratory was located in the central area, slightly to the right. The roads were empty, but the zombies were densely packed. The students, after mutating, had become agile and aggressive. The refrigerated truck was constantly battered, becoming even more dented. We slowed down and entered the small plaza in front of the lab. I honked the horn and reversed, drawing waves of zombies out before crushing them with the transit bus. After repeating this a few times, I finally stopped. The moment Jiang Zhuiying stepped off the bus, the zombies lunged at her. She stood her ground, spun around, and swung her katana fiercely, drawing a blinding white arc lightning wove into a net in front of her. The zombies froze, convulsed, and collapsed as black smoke rose from their bodies. When she sheathed her blade, electricity still danced along the edge. She looked like she had stepped right out of a CGI movie. Even her eyes sparked with lightning. She smiled and said, "Let's go," clearly very satisfied with her new weapon's power. The ability users got out of their cars one by one. Yang Qingqing watched the scene, feeling a pang of resentment. She knew she could absolutely never pull off something like that so effortlessly. Most of the zombies in the building had been lured out. The ones left inside weren't much of a threat. Because of that, I didn't get off the bus, but let Jiang Zhuiying lead the team inside to find the iridium crucibles based on the professor's markings. Before they went in, I spoke up. "Just leave one person here." Everyone exchanged glances. Before Jiang Zhuiying could even speak, Yang Qingqing stepped forward voluntarily. "I'll stay." "You?" Jiang Zhuiying hesitated. Earlier, when I said I needed to leave someone behind, she hadn't thought much of it and was planning to stay herself. She figured it would be safer for me if she stayed by my side. Even with the mobile base, I was still just an ordinary person. But when Yang Qingqing volunteered, Jiang Zhuiying suddenly felt conflicted. Why did I need to leave someone behind? Over the past few days, she had learned quite a bit about my mobile base. Protecting myself among a horde of zombies wasn't hard at all. If I said I needed someone to protect me, it clearly didn't make sense. In fact, I should be the one protecting Yang Qingqing. She walked over and asked me why I needed to do this. I replied gently that it was just for communication. The bus couldn't go into the lab, so I had to wait outside. If anything happened, I'd notify them. I wasn't strong, so having someone to relay messages would be more convenient. Jiang Zhuiying thought about it, then anxiously told me to be careful and not to leave the bus. I immediately reassured her not to worry. Since we were kids, she had always trusted me. No matter how dangerous the situation, I always had a way out. After saying that, Jiang Zhuiying swung her long katana. Clang! The cold blade flashed as she led everyone into the lab building. The iridium crucibles were on the top floor of the National Lab, taking up an entire floor with expensive, state-of-the-art equipment. It was the pride of Jinling University. Every time leaders visited, this stop was a must. Jiang Zhuiying was quite familiar with the layout. Even though most of the zombies had been lured out, there were definitely still some inside. Without her, retrieving those iridium crucibles would be very difficult. Zhang Hai and the other ability user, Sun Kuan, weren't strong fighters. Zhang Hai mainly fixed cars, while Sun Kuan could cling to walls and move like a lizard, but he panicked easily when facing zombies. Before leaving, Zhang Hai even told me to be careful, carrying a bag of mutant meat on one shoulder and a light machine gun in the other hand. Using guns on campus was a last resort. Otherwise, the gunfire would draw an ocean of zombies. I nodded, watching the three of them disappear into the 12-story building. With the power out and no elevators, they had to take the stairs and fight their way up. This consumed a lot of mutant energy, forcing them to replenish it with mutant meat. Going up and down would take at least an hour. That meant I would be staying here for an hour with Yang Qingqing. She understood that too, glancing at her watch. About 10 minutes later, the Jinling noon sun was blazing, beating down on the mobile base. Yang Qingqing looked at the zombies wandering in the distance. There were way more of them over by the dorms. A single gunshot could get them surrounded. Even a speed-type ability user would have a hard time escaping. Unless they had my mobile base, which also happened to have plenty of food and mutant meat on board. She walked up to the windshield, blocking the sun, and softened her voice. The sun is so harsh. I'm sweating all over. Then she took off her jacket, revealing her tight-fitting clothes. She wasn't a stunning beauty, but she had some looks. She was the type used to being pursued and liked to take advantage of that attention. In her eyes, I was just a mediocre guy, easy to manipulate, and definitely wouldn't be able to resist her charm. She acted coy, asking to come onto the bus for a quick shower, saying Zhuiying wouldn't be back for a long time. I watched in silence, sneering inwardly. The apocalypse had exposed all sorts of filth. Selling oneself or killing was no longer anything new. I flatly refused, saying there was no electricity on the bus, so she couldn't shower. But I calmly watched her act play out, because I absolutely wouldn't open the door while Jiang Zhuiying wasn't here. Even though she was just a weak ability user, the gap between her and an ordinary person wasn't huge. I had a gun, but I wasn't going to take any risks. Yang Qingqing half-jokingly said a cold shower was fine too, and if she was cold, I could help warm her up, winking suggestively. I bluntly replied that there wasn't any cold water either. Hearing my answer, the seductive smile on Yang Qingqing's face instantly froze. No cold water? In the apocalypse, the law had collapsed, and morals had crumbled. People lived not knowing if they'd see tomorrow. Many had given in to their desires. I knew she had hinted very clearly, yet I remained completely unmoved. That made her both angry and confused. In her mind, the plan was already set. Get on the bus, take over my mobile base. A vehicle that was bulletproof and had terrifying ramming power. If she owned it, her chances of survival in the apocalypse would skyrocket. Even as an ability user, her combat strength was very weak. She could only jump higher and move more nimbly than a normal person. In a real fight, dealing with 5 or 6 zombies was her limit. Any more, and she could only run. On the bright side, her escape skills were excellent. In her mind, I was just a guy who got lucky and found a modified vehicle. Surviving this long was pure luck. Dying and becoming zombie food was a fitting end for me. Jiang Zhuiying, on the other hand, was different. The girl loved her brother too much and was hard to fool. So she planned to do it all at once, steal the bus and run. The bus was full of food and mutant meat, enough for her to live comfortably for a long time. Even if she couldn't make it on her own, she could join another organization. But I absolutely refused to open the door, turning her face purple with rage. She cursed at me, asking if I was playing dumb or really didn't understand. It's the apocalypse, why not let loose? She even mocked me, asking if I was a real man or if I had some kind of problem. After saying that, she placed her hand on the bus door and pulled hard out of instinct, trying to see if it would open. The door didn't budge. At that exact moment, my eyes turned ice cold. Murderous intent flashed. That action of pulling the door was clearly an attempt to kill. In the apocalypse, killing people for their vehicles was all too common. Bottom-tier survivors would kill for a piece of bread. The most seductive woman could also be the most vicious. I sneered, mocking her that if she wanted to steal my bus, she'd have to trade her life for it. At the same time, I silently activated the air cannon. Hearing that, Yang Qingqing's face changed. Her hand stiffened on the door. She forced a smile and said she didn't know what I was talking about. I looked at her with a gaze full of contempt, stating bluntly that from the moment she suggested leaving someone behind for communication, I knew she would stay, and she really did put on a good show. It's just a pity she wasn't good enough. Trying to seduce me with her looks? Sorry, but in my eyes, sleeping with her was more disgusting than sleeping with a zombie. Those words felt like a slap to her face, making her jealousy and murderous intent explode. She screamed, cursing me for being a useless loser who only survived because of a junk bus and his sister's protection, saying I was worse than trash on the street. Things were past the point of no return. She knew that since I had seen through her, there would be no place for her in this team. Jiang Zhuing would definitely believe her brother. To survive, she had to forge her own path. But before leaving, she wanted revenge. From her pocket, she pulled out a black grenade. In the early stages of evolution, abilities still couldn't compare to firearms, so many ability users chose to trade for weapons. Grenades were both powerful and cheap. She only had one. She planned to throw it at the windshield, believing it would shatter it, as long as she kept her distance to avoid getting hurt. But just as she stepped back, I released the button for the air cannon. The energy was only half charged, but it was more than enough to kill. A boom echoed out. The air seemed to be pierced. The shockwave blasted straight at her before she could even throw the grenade. Everything happened too fast. By the time she saw it, she couldn't react. A miserable scream rang out. It was as if a 1,000-pound hammer had smashed into her chest. Her light body was sent flying, all her ribs shattered, her lungs crushed. She flew over 10 meters before slamming hard into the ground. The grenade slipped from her hand and rolled away. Her face was covered in blood, her eyes still filled with resentment, doubt, and sheer disbelief. It seemed that even at the very end, she couldn't understand why such a terrifying attack had come from that bus. Hit by the air cannon, even though it hadn't fully charged, Yang Qingqing didn't die instantly. She lay flat on the ground, struggling to lift her head to look at the bus, blood constantly pouring from her mouth. In her mind, there was only one panicked thought. Am I going to die? Yang Qingqing couldn't believe it. Even though she had the intention to steal the bus, and even kill me, she never thought it was that big of a deal. She certainly never thought that targeting me and the bus would cost her life. She didn't want to die. She was an ability user, young and beautiful. In her eyes, I was just a loser relying on luck. Why should I be the one to survive, while she had to die? Right then, familiar sounds came from behind her. Yang Qingqing's face instantly turned to sheer terror. It was the sound of footsteps and the wheezing of zombies drawing near. The blast from the air cannon and the smell of blood had drawn them from afar. She looked at me in the bus with desperate eyes, hoping to be saved. But I just stood there, looking back coldly. Finally, she felt a rough hand grab her, and her consciousness quickly sank into darkness. As the zombies completely swarmed over her, my expression didn't change at all. Because anyone who dared to target my vehicle, and even tried to kill me, deserved this end. The explosion also echoed up to the higher floors. Hearing it, Jiang Zhuing finished clearing the lab and ran to the window to look down. Seeing the chaotic scene with dozens of zombies scattered around, but the bus still standing intact, I opened the sunroof and gave a thumbs up to signal everything was fine. Jiang Zhuing breathed a sigh of relief. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan also ran over to ask what happened. Jiang Zhuing just said the zombies were drawn over but had already been dealt with, urging everyone to keep grabbing the supplies. When they reached the top floor, the doors to the national lab were shut tight. They were solid and sturdy, impossible to open through normal means. Even the ability users were stumped. Sun Kuan volunteered for the job. He went back to the room they had just cleared, cut the security mesh on the window, and climbed outside. Clinging to the wall like a lizard, he carried a machine gun and scaled straight up. Reaching the lab window, he cut the mesh, fired a shot into the air to lure the zombies over, kept a safe distance, and quickly took them out. Then he slipped inside and opened the door from within. I heard the gunshot, looked up, and knew they had gotten in. About 20 minutes later, Jiang Zhuiying and her team came down carrying a large bag of items. As soon as they stepped out of the building, they froze. Now that they could see clearly, there was a massive pool of blood around the zombie corpses, and Yang Qingqing was gone. Only her shredded clothes remained. Sun Kuan quickly realized she had been eaten by zombies. What confused everyone was that with her escape skills, she shouldn't have died like that. Jiang Zhuiying immediately looked toward the bus. Seeing that I was still safe, she finally relaxed. Zhang Hai asked what happened. I calmly said that Yang Qingqing had tried to kill me to steal the bus, and even pulled a grenade to kill both me and the vehicle. Just then, the zombies swarmed over. She was too busy trying to kill me and got attacked. I was in the bus and couldn't save her. I only cleared the zombies out afterward. Sun Kuan found a grenade rolling near the green belt and handed it to Jiang Zhuiying. She looked at the grenade with cold eyes and said that anyone who wanted to kill and steal a vehicle deserved to die. The team couldn't keep someone like that. The apocalypse hadn't even been going on for long, yet she already had such vicious thoughts. It showed her true nature was evil and she couldn't be kept around. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan didn't doubt my words at all. Yang Qingqing's resentment had been obvious before. The grenade was also clear evidence. As for whether I saved her or not, no one cared. The only thing was, looking at my calm demeanor inside the bus, they suddenly realized that even though I was an ordinary person, I was absolutely not someone to be messed with. Yang Qingqing had provoked me and paid the price with a gruesome death. As for the exact details, perhaps only I knew. I smiled faintly and told everyone to get on the bus, since we had already gotten the iridium. The Jinling Industrial Park was about an hour's drive from Jinling University. That was before the apocalypse. Now, it was a completely different story. After the apocalypse hit, even choosing the most deserted roads, my convoy was constantly ambushed by zombies. It took us nearly an hour and a half to reach the Jinling Industrial Park. Looking from the outside, the place was terrifyingly desolate. There was nothing moving on the main road, just a few abandoned cars scattered about. The convoy slowly rolled inside. As I drove, I kept an eye on the street signs, looking for the Special Metals Company's billboard. Jiang Zhuiying looked around and said in surprise that there were no zombies in sight. This unnatural silence actually made people uneasy, because with such a dense concentration of factories and businesses, there should have been a lot of zombies. The factories along the road were dead silent, and the guardhouses were empty. Jiang Zhuiying guessed someone might have gotten here first, or something had lured the zombies away. I just reminded everyone to be careful. The sun was high in the sky now, blazing hot, but the air in this deserted industrial park carried an indescribable chill. Right then, Sun Kuan reversed his off-road vehicle, rolled down the window, and reported that the Special Metals Company was in Zone C, while we were currently in Zone A. I asked if he had checked the map. When he confirmed, I ordered us to keep moving. The refrigerated truck and off-road vehicle led the way, while my minibus followed behind. We didn't encounter any zombies along the way. Sun Kuan lowered his voice and asked Zhang Hai if he knew what I was collecting all these weird metals for. Even though I was much younger than him, out of respect for Jiang Zhuiying, Sun Kuan still called me Brother Jiang. And after what happened with Yang Qingqing, the way he looked at me had changed. Zhang Hai just shook his head and said he didn't know. In the apocalypse, just surviving was good enough. Why overthink it? The convoy pressed on, occasionally spotting one or two stray zombies that posed no threat. About 10 minutes later, we stopped in front of the Special Metals Company's gate. The gate was slightly ajar, the inside empty. The guardhouse was a mess, and there were a few dried bloodstains on the road. I signaled to go inside and take a look. After driving around, we quickly found the large warehouse in the back. Its sheer size made me secretly thrilled, because the amount of metal inside was definitely going to be abundant. Everything went smoothly. There were no zombies in the warehouse, and the doors weren't locked. People had probably fled during the chaos. I drove the bus into the warehouse. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan started finding and loading the metals onto the vehicles based on the list. The metals were scattered all over the warehouse. If it were just me, it would take forever, but with their help, the efficiency skyrocketed. Even though driving the mobile base was very safe, once I entered places the vehicle couldn't reach, like the key laboratory, the vulnerability of an ordinary person like me would be exposed immediately. Just 2 or 3 zombies would be enough to kill me. Because of that, these survivors had helped me a lot. In just one day, I had obtained 2 mutant cores and gathered enough metal to build the biological lab: 100 kilograms of titanium, 120 kilograms of nickel, 150 kilograms of cobalt. Block after block of metal was loaded onto the vehicle, filling the floor and leaving me ecstatic. With enough materials, I could start building the biological lab tonight. It would help me get through the toughest phase right now, even though I still didn't know what else it would bring. I stood in the bus, looking at this special metals warehouse, and marked its location on the map. If I needed to upgrade later, I could come back here without wasting time searching. Just as Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan were still loading the metals, loud noises suddenly erupted from outside. Jiang Zhuing immediately turned toward the gate, her eyes full of caution. The other 2 also dropped the metal and grabbed their weapons, ready for a fight. We hadn't seen anyone since entering the industrial park, so the sound of vehicles now made the atmosphere incredibly tense. An ear-piercing screech rang out. Zhang Hai and I saw a modified Hummer barrel straight toward the gate and slam on the brakes. Virum, virum, virum. Right behind the Hummer, a fleet of off-road vehicles and 7 or 8 motorcycles roared in, blocking the main gate in the blink of an eye. Seeing that, I couldn't help but frown. These vehicles were mounted with all sorts of modified weapons. Long spikes were attached to the front bumpers. The riders wore welded iron helmets, only exposing their mouths and eyes. Their gazes were exactly like wild dogs hunting for prey, cold, vicious, and staring right at us. Just looking at them, it was obvious they weren't to be messed with. Jiang Zhuing took one look at them, her face darkening, and muttered, "It's the Blood Wolves." I asked who they were. Sun Kuan immediately explained that their leader called himself Blood Wolf. No one knew his real name. The people following him were all lunatics. Zhang Hai chimed in, saying he had run into this group at the satellite city. Rumor had it their team's casualty rate was insanely high, and even the leader had been replaced. They went out hunting mutant beasts every day, finding supplies to trade for meat from the military. A lot of people died, but the survivors grew stronger rapidly. Even an ordinary person, if they lived long enough, could be fully armed. At this stage, the gap between ordinary people and ability users wasn't that huge. If fully equipped, an ordinary person could go toe-to-toe with an ability user. I looked at the group. Even before they got close, I could smell the thick stench of blood radiating from both the people and their vehicles. Clearly, the Blood Wolves were up to no good. Zhang Hai leaned in and whispered that their team used to have 3 ability users. One died, leaving only 2. The guy who stepped out of that Hummer was the current Blood Wolf. The old Blood Wolf was already dead. 4 people stepped out of the Hummer, 2 of them ability users. One was a woman in a leather jacket and leather pants, with wavy shoulder-length hair. She wore sunglasses and leather boots, holding a shotgun, with a bandolier full of ammo and a long knife strapped to her waist. She looked wild to the extreme. The other person looked very ordinary, in his 20s, wearing casual clothes, headphones, and lensless glasses. If no one pointed him out, no one would guess he was the current Blood Wolf. Zhang Hai nervously whispered that if a fight broke out, he and Sun Kuan would very likely become burdens. Not to mention, the other side had them outnumbered. I listened quietly, knowing full well that a fight right now would put us at a massive disadvantage. Blood Wolf put his hands in his pockets, took a few steps forward, and smiled at Jiang Zhuing. His tone was polite, like greeting a friend, saying he remembered her and had heard of her last time at the satellite city. But with this lineup, he clearly wasn't here to socialize. Jiang Zhuing didn't beat around the bush, asking straight out what he wanted. The smile on Blood Wolf's face vanished. He said coldly that he should be the one asking that question, since we had entered his territory and taken things without asking. Only then did I understand. This industrial park was the Blood Wolves' territory. They had probably been tracking us from the start, waiting until we entered the metal warehouse to block our way. Zhang Hai and Sun Kuan's faces both turned ugly. They never expected the Blood Wolves' base to be here. Jiang Zhuing said these metals weren't theirs to begin with, and keeping them was useless anyway. But the woman in leather sneered, replying that whether it was useful or not was their business. If we wanted to take it, we had to negotiate. Jiang Zhuing asked bluntly what they wanted. Blood Wolf pushed up his glasses and smiled, saying that if we wanted to take things, we had to trade. If we had 10 tons of mutant beast meat, we could treat this place like a supermarket and take whatever we wanted. Hearing that, Jiang Zhuing's face instantly darkened. This wasn't a trade or extortion, it was an absurd demand. They clearly knew we couldn't possibly have 10 tons of meat, let alone trade it for a pile of metal they didn't even need. I spoke up, asking what exactly they wanted. Blood Wolf looked at me in surprise, not understanding why an ordinary person could speak on behalf of Jiang Zhuing's team. But seeing everyone's reaction, he quickly realized my words carried weight. He chuckled, saying it was still 10 tons of mutant beast meat, because he had a lot of brothers to feed. Then he threw out a mocking remark, saying our team was full of useless, old, and weak people. A bunch of deadweight. I don't know why you even keep them around. The women can be slaves, working and taking care of our needs. What's the point of keeping the rest? His subordinates immediately chimed in, saying it was because our leader was a woman. The whole group burst into laughter, and the woman in leather laughed so hard her whole body shook. Jiang Zhuing's eyes turned ice cold. A few sparks of electricity suddenly crackled around her body. Seeing that, Blood Wolf stopped laughing and stared intently at the electricity, a look of greed flashing in his eyes. He narrowed his eyes and said that if we didn't have 10 tons of meat, Jiang Zhuing could join his team. Jiang Zhuing froze for a second, then sneered, calling him an idiot. A demand like that would only end in mutual destruction. His team was strong, but she wasn't afraid. Blood Wolf smirked. He understood Jiang Zhuing's strength very well, and to him, that little bit of risk was completely worth the payoff of winning.